You're listening to the Soulless Minions of Orthodoxy, alternative DVD commentaries. Our movie for today is Batman, 1989, directed by Tim Burton, starring Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson. My guests for today are the other Soulless Minion, Justin, in the Soulless Minion studio with me, and our other guests are Mike Ortiz and Damon Shaw from Geek. Also, we have Mike and Max from Commentary Track Stars. If you'd like to watch this movie with us, our sync point is going to be the first frame after the Warner Brothers logo has faded away. So go ahead and set that up on your DVD if you'd like to watch this with us. I'm going to give you a countdown, and when you hear me say unpause, we'll all unpause together, and we'll watch the movie in sync. 3, 2, 1, unpause.
There's Clouds, Warner Brothers Presents.
Oh man, that's all shaky.
Yeah.
This was shot on film.
Jack Nicholson.
That's the past.
Well, I forgot that Jack Nicholson was top billed.
Oh, yeah. And in fact, there was a bunch of posters which had to be destroyed because they said Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton.
And Jack Nicholson was
on
really
top.
upset that they put his first name on a poster.
Yeah, it was like contractually, it was supposed to be like Nicholson and Keaton, so.
And he raised his stink because his first name was on the poster. Everybody should know my name. They don't need to see my first name.
I don't know if it was.
There's so many
like
Jacks.
Karloff.
I mean, to be fair, I got that information from a drunk comic book store owner, so I don't know how accurate it is, but he's the one who sold me the
I think
posters,
that's
so
how all great truths begin.
There you go.
Pat Hingle also demanded the same thing. I just want to be billed as Hingle.
Well, Billy D just wanted to be Billy D.
No, actually, he wanted to be Lando.
Well, he does turn against the hero in the movie.
He's-
If he would have
Jack
stayed
Palance
there, I
wanted to be
guess.
credited as a question mark.
So,
And the musician wanted to be credited as a whole bunch of crazy weird symbols, which is an actual fact. And that's somehow that is the most insane thing. And yet it is the only one that's real. Welcome to the real world.
there you go. So, we were struggling with what exactly is the difference between this one and Batman Returns on our Batman Returns commentary, because we were all sort of in agreement that it is a much different movie stylistically, but we couldn't really figure out why. And in watching this, I think I kind of found a way to put it into words.
I never agreed on the term much.
Okay, this one is kind of film noir, and that one is like Hammer horror. Batman Returns is more like Hammer horror. You know?
Oh, I like that. Yeah, that's very good.
You think so? Hammer horror?
I would
Really?
say so. I mean, to a degree. Like if I had to.
I think it's Hammer horror seen over the shoulders of the Maltese Falcon.
I don't know about that, but
Well, taking notes on this last night, yeah, noir is one thing that came up, and to me, the difference is that Tim Burton had his hands all over Batman Returns. Not so much of this. That felt more studio control with this.
well, I mean, there are two big elements which changed between movies, and that's the production designer and cinematographer. Anton Furst, production designer here. I think he died, right?
Yeah, he died suicide, I believe. I could be wrong on that.
Well, he did this movie, so...
And then Roger Pratt was replaced with the guy who did Edward Scissorhands. Don't quite understand that move, but
I heard something, a description of the first 4 Batman movies that I think actually kind of extends into the next Batman movies. That really talked about how they are different in relation to the way the comics are different, and they talked this movie being very much like Detective Comics number 27, or the first year or two of Batman. So it's very original and very dark, and kind of uneven, but really unpolished. And then by the 40s, in Batman, which would be Batman Returns, you get a very similar thing, but it's much more polished. It's much brighter. In the comics, Robin is introduced. It's just a little bit more slick. And then the third one, which gets kind of wacky and sci-fi, it would be like the 50s comics, where Batman was really just, there was no kind of dark night to it at all. The Batman and Robin was the 60s comics, which would be camp and the TV show. And then Batman Begins would be like the 70s comics with Neil Adams. The Dark Knight literally is taken from the name of an 80s comic, and then the new one is Bane, which is a 90s villain. So you get this whole breadth of Batman's history in very different styles of movies, which I thought was an interesting take. I don't remember who said it originally, but I remember hearing that and going, wow, that actually really does sort of fit.
Yeah, it does.
Not intentionally, but...
That's interesting.
I think I saw that on the making of, on the bonus disc, the cinematic saga of The Dark Knight. I think that's where that was a really good apt comparison.
American Express. Don't leave home without it.
Hello, everybody.
Hey.
Hey.
So that's...
We're joined in progress by the other Soulless Minion.
I'm just soulless.
Well, if you'd like to catch up with us, if you can sync at 6 minutes, I'll give you the countdown and tell you when to go.
All right, that sounds good.
And that's Justin, for those who don't know. Hello.
I always wondered why...
Yes,
these
this
guys
is
look like
Justin. I'm one of the
junkies.
Soulless Minions.
So
Not the Soulless Minions. I mean the guys, the criminals here are like, God, these are some ugly people in Gotham City.
Well,
You know what was weird? There's a lot of people on the street. I mind you, I haven't watched this in 10 years at least, so it's my first time watching it in a while, and there's a lot of people.
Well, it's right outside of the theater.
Gotham has a crack epidemic, clearly.
I mean, you
Yeah.
figured the theater was just getting out, I mean, you could see that.
Yeah,
being
but
out.
These
that
guys
was-
were coming from the theater? Oh, that makes sense. Then.
Well, no, not these guys.
these guys were
but the
hanging
family
out
was.
behind the theater because they were going to sneak in, watch an R-rated movie.
Justin, unpause in 3, 2, 1, go.
I remember that moment
6.
of him dropping down, being one of the most epic moments ever
Yeah.
in cinematic history for me. Yeah.
Now it just feels a little flat.
Yeah, they had
No, it doesn't
Oh, it
feel
still
flat.
works for you?
I think it's
Well,
awesome.
I think it's much worse than
Oh,
flat.
the intonation just felt like you were kind of let down by age, It just wasn't
Oh
as...
no, because watching it, I've become the 12-year-old kid again watching Batman for the first time. It's
I know how that
awesome.
goes because I actually sort of flash back to my thought process of watching this when I was a kid, and I remember knowing that Batman's parents were killed in Crime Alley, and while I was watching the movie, it occurred to me that was a ridiculous thing to name an alley because of course there's going to be a lot of crime there.
Is that really? I don't think that's what the
No, it's not what it's actually
Okay.
named, but that's how I was told. I was like, that's
That's what
Crime
it- that's what
Alley,
it was
and I was
called.
like, why would you name that? That's crazy.
Okay,
If
now,
I was a criminal, I would go somewhere other than Crime Alley because that's where they're going to be looking.
Like Safe Avenue.
Yeah, that's where their guard's going to be down.
Now, Brian Townsend has a theory about Harvey Dent being black here, which made Harvey Dent black in the animated series. And if you actually go back and watch, he's actually pretty dark-skinned. It's pretty funny that they made Two-Face a black guy. What are you trying to say?
For anybody who listens to our commentaries on a regular basis, which is probably about 0, we've been going backwards in our commentaries for these films. So this is kind of the last step. And I don't know how the rest of you feel, but it's been a journey. They've gotten, going backwards, they've gotten increasingly better.
Whoa!
Finally
That's not
ending
accurate.
at this one. This is for me.
Oh, you mean starting at Batman and Robin?
Starting Batman and Robin, going backwards, they've gotten increasingly better in quality. Well, Batman and Robin is just awesome in a campy way, but this one, I was like, well, I hope this one establishes my faith once again in the Batman franchise.
I actually like Batman Returns more than this one.
Some people say that. I've got
yeah.
a lot. Yeah, a lot of people like it's kind of evenly split. People prefer the second one, but me, if you listen to our commentary for Batman Returns, I was just kind of bored by the movie, and I was like, well, I hope this one resurrects my faith. And I don't know if
that's
it did or
funny you
not.
say that because I somewhat rewatched Batman Returns recently, and I was kind of bored with it too. Some of the more action stuff was fun, but on a whole, I felt it was kind of slow.
I feel like I'm
I
the only
only
one
watched
that
it a
doesn't
long
like
time.
any of them, but thinks Batman Returns is better.
Well, I thought there was just too many extraneous elements. The Penguin running from mayor, and the interesting elements with the Catwoman and maybe Bruce Wayne were kind of left on the back burner for too long.
Its story and its kind of narrative tightness is bad, but I think for me, the performances and the feel and the individual scenes that worked very, very well, but just not really fit together. So, I personally, I have a much higher tolerance than most for a movie that doesn't really have a good, strong, direct narrative if I'm really enjoying the characters and the moments. And that's really what I liked about that movie. This movie actually is a little bit tighter than I remembered. I actually, if you had asked me this question a couple of years ago, I didn't really like this movie. I loved it when it came out. And then I really just I was like, God, that movie doesn't hold up, and it's terrible, and it's shot bad, and they didn't open up the scope, and then like I watched it again, and I'm like, no, actually I like it again. I don't know what happened, but I don't know if it was just cynicism on my part, but I actually enjoyed this more than I remembered enjoying it for many years.
I never disliked
it. We talked over the introduction there of the real star of the film, Jerry Hall.
I'm telling you, man.
And also Jack Nicholson, he was in that scene as well.
Oh, right.
Don't be writing this stuff again.
What were you saying, Justin?
Oh, well, I've been watching a lot of video reviews online, and one of them was this one. And the guy in the review pointed out that as opposed to Batman Begins with The Dark Knight, which definitely is shot live on real streets and all of that, it feels like the real world. This is so clearly confined to sets and studios and all of that. And there's a certain charm to that, but I think Max said it. I mean, it lacks scope kind of because of that. It's got tons of atmosphere. It's not like it doesn't have visually the things that you need and want from a Batman movie, but it does feel contained. Even as a kid, I was kind of aware of that.
Well, it feels contained, but
very
it also
much a
feels
studio noir film. Yeah,
it also feels constrained. I think one of the things which always struck out to me ever since I was a kid watching this is how the action sequences were never quite what they needed to be compared to, say, the comic books, because I really think the problem is they hadn't figured out how to do the suit. You couldn't do a suit like Adam West had because it would just look goofy, but when you put him in all this armor, he has absolutely zero mobility. So it's like, how do you deal with that? And I think they finally, cracked the code with the Nolan movies.
Well,
but
I think they actually,
now,
to be fair to the guy who did it, I think they actually cracked the code with Forever.
That could be. I mean, there was.
That's like the first time I thought, "Hey, that fits."
That actually, it was definitely, like here he can barely move.
Yeah,
he
does the comical superhero twist whenever he needs to turn his head. His whole upper body turns.
Right.
That's a big technological leap over the years since this was made.
Sure.
But the best part of that's one of the best parts of the recent movies. I mean, they actually straight up explicitly addressed, I can't turn my freaking head. I need to be able to turn my freaking head.
And the their explanation for it was pretty simple. They were like, oh, essentially it's a motorcycle helmet.
Okay, there's a shot on screen, this amazing matte painting that totally looks fake. This is the exact reason why I like the things that I find objectionable in this movie. Like the style and the sort of the graphic quality of this movie is exactly what I like about it.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
It also causes the movie to suffer because of that scope aspect where, like, even as a kid, you might not have a word for it, but you know that if you ran around the corner, the reality would just collapse.
It's like you're watching a play instead
Right.
of a movie.
But
or instead of something.
But there are movies that actually pull that off. I mean, like City of Lost Children has a similar sort of crazy style, but it works. You feel like if you turned a corner, there'd still be street there.
See, I actually like that about this movie. I know I'm in the minority, but in terms of kind of the feel and the vibe and the tone, I actually prefer these movies to the Nolan movies because the Nolan movies are too real. And for me, it's like Batman is often talked about as being kind of the more realistic superhero, and honestly, I just don't buy it. I mean, he doesn't have superpowers, but he's every bit as unrealistic as every other superhero. And what I like about comic books is that this is not our world. I don't want to see that in our world because it's less interesting to me in our world. As much as I love those movies, I still there's a distance there when I look at them and I just kind of go, I don't buy that someone would dress like that in my world, so I can't buy that someone would dress like that in that world. I can buy it in this world because this is a hyper reality. It bears no resemblance to our world, even visually. I mean, it gets worse as the movies go on. Gotham shouldn't be Chicago for me. It should be this twisted gothic thing that can't exist in our world. And that's one of the things that I really like about these movies.
But there are like these. I mean, we just saw Time magazine, which like flies in the face of the fictional reality they're trying to create. I mean, it's suddenly like big sign. Hey, we're supposed to be reality, and it's not.
Well,
I mean, some details like that. I mean, but it's a Time magazine, but it's a Time magazine about a fictional comic book country instead of it being, Syria or something like that.
Yeah.
And like this,
me,
this is clearly a
concept.
set or a model, but I don't know. There's just something about it that I really like.
It's all four of the first movies, have that sort of very studio feel, stylized, reality. I'd say that this one is the least, and they actually get more unrealistic as the movies progress. And but I don't know, like I definitely don't prefer this to what Nolan did, but I definitely see this having its place. If someone says I'm going to make a movie like this, I'll be like, okay, that's perfectly fine. I think it works perfectly well for this movie. I mean, it's not unlike Dick Tracy in that sense. It's that hyper reality that sort of belongs on a studio set. Now, me personally, I prefer the Nolan stuff, the realistic stuff. Although I totally understand what Max is saying, and he's not wrong.
I didn't say that.
Well, that was
no, about the.
That's all, gentlemen. Thank you, gentlemen. That's
The what?
all.
I'm
I
not
think
sure.
he just died.
about the scope. And again, that's a technological problem with. I mean, I could imagine a movie like this done today that would be done more like Sin City, where you can still get that artificial reality, but you can get a lot more scope because of the digital technology. I mean, here they're limited by what you can actually do.
Well, I mean, I think that the issue is more that. Like it is a difficult conceit. I mean, like part of the issue of Batman Begins was let's spend 2 hours explaining why this guy's running around in a suit, and you're going to believe it. I mean, like that has to be you have to buy into the idea of Batman in order to buy into the reality of the Nolan movies. But I think that's what Batman Begins was all about. It was to sort of immerse you in this reality and then explain how a guy could theoretically do this.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to do what this movie does and just drop Batman into this reality. You can't just drop Batman into Batman Begins and have people buy it.
No,
that's
tricky.
the problem is I still never bought it.
Yeah, I think that's
walked away going, no. If somebody did that in our world, they would not survive.
Yeah, that's that's interesting. I mean, like I have that with a lot of things. I mean, there are a lot of things that will break the reality of something for me, but for me, like the world is much more important than the individual components. Like even if the individual component is the protagonist, like it's
don't get me wrong. I love those movies, and they're far superior movies. It's just in terms of for me, Batman works better not being realistic. Just like I don't want realistic Superman.
Well, yeah, I know what you mean because like in terms of flexibility. Like, there's only so much you can do in the Nolan universe,
and even just in terms of a personal preference. I mean, it's the reason that I like comic books as a form is because you really can't be super realistic, unless you're doing like photo comics. There's always a level of detachment,
and photo
when you
comics
get
are
into
terrible.
the comics I love the most, they're the ones that are probably least visually like our world. So for me, translating Batman to the screen, because I'm coming from a comic book background, I want to see more of a comic book, though not necessarily cartoonish, but many comic book movies have this kind of weird heightened reality. I think the Marvel movies really kind of nailed it in a way that is a really nice balance of reality and still you could buy that people would run around like this. And the Nolan, I mean, I'm overstating when I say I don't buy it at all. I do buy it in the Nolan universe. I just, there's that voice kind of that just sort of haunts the back of your mind when you're watching it going, no, that wouldn't work. But on something like this, that voice shuts up because that voice would be just talking constantly during this movie.
I miss her. And she's not in the shot right now, but I miss
Basinger?
Vicky Vale. No, Vicky Vale. I remember when Vicky Vale was a prominent member of the Batman universe, and she's non-existent now.
Was she?
Yeah,
I don't
I mean,
remember her ever being prominent.
Well,
Was
I
she
think it
ever
was-
part of
She
it?
was.
Really?
She was at the time of this movie.
Yeah,
But like
yeah.
At
even
the time of this
they
movie, she
dusted
was.
her off for this movie.
But like
Oh, yeah.
I started reading Batman in like '93, and I read like pretty much every
Oh, yeah.
Batman comic for like 3 years, and she wasn't in a single one. of them.
She was gone by the time.
No, she was in Superman comic books, and her name was Lois Lane.
Yeah, I think at some point I remember being like hanging out at the comic book store at some point reading in like Wizard that Vicky Vale was going to be introduced into the Batman continuity, and it probably happened, but nobody cared because it was by that point like '98.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
well,
part
she
of it
was she was a golden age character.
She's been around for.
She was she'd been around, maybe not golden, maybe the 50s, but she had been around for a long time, just hadn't been significant or in a Batman comic for a very long time.
The character first appears in Batman number 49, 1948.
Wow, so golden age, yeah.
That is weird.
Now, I read an interview with a writer named Steve Englehart who wrote Batman during the 70s, and he created a character named Silver St. Cloud, and he said that up until they really started shooting this movie, this character was Silver St. Cloud, and they changed it at the last minute to a very old Batman character. He believes because there would be some rights issues, possibly with him making some sort of legal claim to the character because it was created, between certain dates and things like that. I don't know if I buy that.
Maybe it was just
But,
a name. I mean, Vicky Vale is a much more believable name than Silver St. Cloud. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think there were changes to large aspects of the character to make her much more distinct. But she basically had there's actually a story that he wrote that has a lot of similarities to the way this particular story plays out. It could just as easily be someone who wrote a story that turned out similar, that's just making a stretch in his own imagination.
Can I just say that is the moment that sold Michael Keaton to me as Batman when he says it's Japanese. How do you know that? Because I bought it in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, this scene's really good, and that's another thing. Which, if you let's just say.
We're gonna do this.
We're gonna do this. Okay, let's just say for a minute that you don't know that Batman is Bruce Wayne going into this movie. You don't know.
You've
anything
had that
about
part of your brain
Batman.
removed.
And
I did not know that.
That's the front.
You didn't know that? All right.
No, when I
And
was
the
a
back,
kid
and a
in
little bit off the top.
1989,
Okay.
I didn't know anything about comic
Okay,
books.
so-
I didn't know that Bruce Wayne was Batman.
And could you tell? Let's say that the mask actually worked, and you couldn't tell that it was Bruce Wayne behind that mask, right, Michael Keaton? At what point in this movie do you find out that? And I've watched it a few times trying to figure it out, and then I get caught up in the movie. But I think it's when he goes to the apartment.
It's
and
when
saying,
he's saying
Batman.
when she's out of the room, "I'm Batman" to
Yeah.
himself.
I think that's where
Yes.
it is.
But really, who's doing that?
I'm just saying it's an interesting thing. I don't know.
It is.
Someone-
I mean, I hadn't thought about it until you just brought it up. But the
Yeah.
first time I saw it, I didn't know. But so I want to go back just for a moment to something that Mike was saying about this movie kind of being more in a comic book world, as opposed to the Dark Knight and Batman Begins kind of being in reality. That's kind of the way I always felt with the Nolan films. They were just too immersed in reality, but they were still really good. But this, was more stylized, and it has that noir feeling.
When I
has a lot of like noirish elements, like pinstripe suits and trench coats and whatnot. And that I really liked, and I took notes on it. I was like, this has a very noir style, but it has more style than I thought than substance.
Well, can I jump
yeah.
in? Can I ask you a question, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, since I missed the first few minutes, maybe you guys already touched this a little bit, but I'm just curious to, maybe roundtable here, get your guys' impression of Tim Burton's influence here and what you feel about that. I mean, we know what Nolan did to the new ones and his influence, the reality of it, but Tim Burton brings in my opinion, such a Tim Burton stamp to this movie and to Batman Returns for that matter. What do you feel about it? Do you feel it hurts it? Do you feel it strengthens it? What are your thoughts on Tim Burton's influence?
Well, let's start.
Because in my opinion, this is Tim Burton's Batman. This isn't just Batman.
No, it's just Batman because I was 12 when I saw it, and I didn't know anything about Tim Burton. I didn't know that Tim Burton had just before directed Edward Scissorhands and
he'd done Pee-wee and
was it just Pee-wee?
and Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice.
Right before
Pee-wee and Beetlejuice, and they are completely different movies from a 12-year-old standpoint. Plus, without Burton's influence, I don't think Batman's as big as it is.
There's a larger issue that this is like essentially the second ever successful superhero movie. Yeah. That's the bigger deal.
The first Superman movie?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, like, this is, like, the only reason we have Avengers in theaters right now is because this movie was a hit. Like, you can trace the continuity back to this moment. Like, ultimately, I do not like this movie, but if we didn't have this, we would not have, like, a team superhero movie in theaters.
Yeah. And this is the dawn of what we could call a modern superhero movie.
Right, which is why, like, in a way, like, the question of, like, what aspects of this are like, Tim Burton, it's sort of, it's important in terms of ranking it in terms of in the overall structure, but, like, in a sense, like, it had to be this, because there's no way America would have understood Batman Begins.
Well, I mean, okay, there's all that, but that's sort of getting away from, I think, what Justin's initial question was, which is, what do you think about the Tim Burton influence, right? Am I right there?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
like, what do you,
guys?
Like just like not taking
at the
removing
time,
it from historical...
instead of in a historical context,
yeah, right,
just an aesthetic.
Yeah, now
right.
I am totally on the same bandwagon that when I was I think I was in 6th grade when this came out, 5th or 6th grade. I didn't know anything about Tim Burton specifically or anything like that, so that didn't mean anything. When I look at this now, I just see Tim Burton all over it. And
I think this is where he began to branch out and become really Tim Burton with this movie, and then very much so with Batman Returns. I don't think Tim Burton's voice had been completely heard yet until probably Batman Returns. I think I think Batman actually shaped Tim Burton more than Tim Burton shaping the Batman stuff.
You really think so? Because I mean, to me,
I wouldn't say that. Yeah.
This has,
but look at Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Pee-wee's Big Adventure, completely different. Stylistically, it looks similar, but these are very different movies.
But we have the historical record of knowing that Tim Burton worked at Disney for like a decade, and all of his drawings were of Nightmare Before Christmas characters.
Yeah.
And then we have Beetlejuice. I mean, Beetlejuice feels a lot like this.
Yeah,
I don't know how
it does.
How old you guys are, but I mean, I was like 21 years old when this movie came out, so I was an adult.
Me too, yeah.
Looking at it, and I did see Tim Burton's influence. I mean, I was familiar with both of those other movies, and even just following the announcement and when he was announced, and it was like, oh, the guy who did Beetlejuice, and that was kind of intriguing because it was somebody with such a very unique, powerful and cartoony visual style, and that's something that I thought, like, okay, this guy understands. At least to some extent, you get the feeling he would understand comic book storytelling, understand where it works, have a dark humor to it, as well as a very kind of twisted and imaginative style. And I do think it's all over this.
He was also an accomplished artist.
And I mean, I think certainly this was the movie where the Tim Burton that we finally get really starts to emerge, and it's his third film, so and it still takes a while, and I think it coalesces even later than Batman Returns, and I think once you get more into Edward Scissorhands, we start really getting Tim Burton as kind of a personal vision. This has still got a lot of I mean, he is taking somebody else's vision and turning it to his own, and that's something that I think eventually he even starts doing better. It's interesting. We were talking about the scope of this movie, and I remember when I saw Sweeney Todd and saw the world that he had crafted in that movie, and I just remember thinking, I would actually like to see today's Tim Burton make a Batman movie. That
is a weird thing. Every time that I see, because it seems like he always has a movie coming out right around the time that one of these Nolan movies comes out, and I'm like, it's just weird to see like his progression as an artist, since he's the guy who originated Batman on film in the modern era, to see what it is that he's doing now while Batman is, bigger than it's ever been, theoretically, is weird,
Would if he did Batman now, would Johnny Depp be Batman? Because Michael Keaton was.
I bet you he would.
Johnny Depp would be Batman and the female love interest.
No, Johnny Depp would be the Joker.
He might be the Joker.
Yeah, probably.
Oh God, that's true.
Well, answering your question, Justin, I mean, I think that I don't know. I think that Tim Burton kind of damaged. I think Batman as a character. I'm watching this movie again last night. This didn't feel like a Batman movie at all, and it wasn't like I remembered. This is a movie about Joker and the people around Batman, not about Batman.
It also gets.
I would
Batman
say the same thing about
wrong.
The Dark Knight, though.
I felt
You could.
if you're going back to Batman Begins is actually about Batman, right?
Yeah.
This, I felt they hardly explored his origin or his pain at all, and it was just more or less about the people around him, and I felt really let down. Like maybe I shouldn't have watched this movie again. Just let it stay in my memory.
Well, I
The
think
comic books were like that.
but there's an interesting thing, like the animated series.
I'd say that's very much a part of Batman. Batman is less interesting than his villains.
Well, I
think that Batman's very interesting. Though.
We did a bit about this in the Batman Returns, but I think superficially, it's really easy to discount the character of Batman. But if you get into it and you know the history and you stick with him for a while, you realize that no, he's actually far more interesting than his villains.
Yeah.
But superficially, it's really hard to see what's interesting about the guy.
Well, Justin,
I don't find Batman that interesting. I mean, I'm not a Batman fan, and even on our Best of Batman, I pointed that out. Mm-hmm. I've never been a particular fan of the character. I've been a fan of a lot of the work that he's been featured in, but it just for me, I was just never particularly interested in him. Certainly never connected or cared. About
that reminds me, something that I should have brought up at the beginning. But Damon, don't you do a Batman commentary podcast?
Nope.
No.
He used to.
You stopped? Batman animated series, yeah.
All right, well then, screw that.
Well, I mean, I wanted to say something. The animated series, I felt, had to do a lot of work to rehabilitate the character of Batman. Coming after these movies, they had to do a lot.
No, they had no work to rehabilitate it's completely different. It's Batman is now an entity, and now they get to shape what people think about Batman later on. It had nothing to do with rehabilitation because this is Batman. This is the way Batman has always been. But the animated series got to shape my perception of Batman for the rest of my life. It had nothing to do with rehabilitation because my father still likes Batman. Like, this movie is a fun movie for him. He still likes it. It didn't hurt Batman one bit. Well, I think actually what might have hurt Batman a little bit was the fact that at the time they tried to change the comics to fit the movies. And I think that actually hurt Batman more than actually the movies themselves.
Well, I mean, that could have been, but I mean, I can totally see, this is the Batman that people consider to be Batman, the overwhelming majority of people considered this to be Batman, certainly back in 1989 and when the animated series came out.
And to this day, people still consider Batman to be a guy who lives in this kind of Gotham City.
And to give the, Bruce Timm and Paul Dini and those dudes a lot of credit, they basically, instead of, doing what, maybe the comic books did and altering their vision to suit the movie, they were like, okay, this is an opportunity that we have to do Batman as we know him and love him and as we see him existing, And, I mean, every time I go back and think about it, I mean, it really just sort of comes down to, that animated series is, to me, the definitive Batman.
It's the only one that doesn't
have...
It doesn't have, it's the only one that doesn't have 1,000 different permutations.
Yeah, it's the most streamlined, perfect, consistent.
It is. I remember when you did your Batman continuity, where you went through the comic books and tried to figure out what the necessary reading was. And I remember saying that's stupid because you could just watch the animated series.
Yeah, and there was a part of me. No, there was a big part of me which knew that you were right, but then that would destroy all the fun of it.
No, I respect the idea of the endeavor. It was just funny seeing you try.
Yeah, whatever.
But the animated series does actually change over the years. Batman or Bruce Wayne doesn't change very much, but the villains change very much based on what was going on in the movies.
But if you look at like how much the animated series changes compared to how much even the comic books change,
the comic books change
over that same period of
yeah,
time.
a ridiculous amount. The animated series shifted.
Or even the live action movies change. You know.
Yeah, well, I mean, the animated series shifted in tone and style gradually, but it was somewhat about
there's some huge changes, like Penguin. Penguin on the show started out like a monster, just like he is in this.
Yeah, but I mean,
that was one of the
movies.
things.
But that's like a minor thing in the grand scheme.
That
In
was
the grand
also
scheme of the
studio
series,
mandated.
yeah, in the grand scheme of the series, like it shifted. It shifted ever so slightly. Like it did not ever reach Batman Forever's level of absurdity.
Yeah.
No, it never got there.
But for me, and I guess this just is a difference in what we look at. A lot of people will say that the animated series is a definitive Batman, and as far as I'm concerned, there's no such thing as a definitive Batman. Oh. Batman is defined by being a character that has changed radically over the years, and nothing is a definitive. And that's people will discount kind of a comedic Batman, but that's a very valid Batman. I mean, Batman was a lighthearted, campy superhero character. Yeah. For a very, very long time, and even like Batman Brave and the Bold. So for me, there is no definitive Batman. So Tim Burton can't hurt Batman any more than any bad run on the comics hurt Batman. Nor does Christopher Nolan necessarily elevate Batman any more than The Dark Knight does. I mean, it's those. I like the fact that it is someone's stamp. So this is Burton's Batman. That's Nolan's Batman. You've got Frank Miller's Batman. You've got Neil Adams' Batman. Denny O'Neil. You've got Bob
Adam
Kane.
West.
Adam West Batman. So there is no one Batman for me.
What you're saying makes perfect sense.
As a philosophical concept, we are totally on board with that.
It's not a concept. It's a reality.
In execution. I mean, I think because if I look at the Batman comics that I love, there's no similarity really to me between Frank Miller's Dark Knight, even Frank Miller's Dark Knight and Frank Miller's Batman Year One. I don't seem like they come from the same person. And that even the new Batman comics. I mean, I love this stuff because there's so much of a variety.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about like the concept of like essentially embracing the entropy of the character rather than any given permutation. But I mean, like in terms of people like Mike and I who did spend a significant chunk of our youth hanging out in a comic book store, if you've ever had a conversation about what actually happened to the X-Men, then
life,
you have a definitive Batman.
Yeah.
Because it's a particular sort of neurological disorder that requires us to have a belief in the actual thing, whether or not that's a ridiculous concept.
And that has been a crusade that I have been against for a long, long time.
I relate to that, but at the same time, I cannot avoid that I have to have a definitive Batman in my head.
You're totally right. You're absolutely totally right, and yet I can't accept what you're saying.
No, I think that it's a philosophical concept. It's totally sound, but in practical execution, in terms of fans, never going to happen.
And it happens for me and it happens for other people. And the main reason that this should be embraced is it will make your life a lot easier and you'll enjoy your entertainment a lot more.
I can do that with a lot of things, not superhero movies.
But no, I mean, it's true. Like this movie is a really good movie. I mean, like right here
no,
we're seeing...
it's not.
No, it is. It is. Right here we're seeing, like Jack Palance and Jack Nicholson, just sort of like go to town. And that's awesome, And the fact that people, and I mean in my youth, I liked this movie, but there were people who who I looked up to as comic book fans who disowned this movie because of its inconsistencies with.
How about the one
Batman.
giant, humongous, glaring inconsistency? The one that is actually significant, that is a very big deal, that
that
it's in your head. Yes.
I know, and that was the biggest problem. Yes, he kills.
Wait, what is it?
He kills people in this movie.
Yeah,
Batman. Well, Batman doesn't kill people. And
anymore.
By that, we mean that Batman never killed
doesn't
people.
Kill anybody
Batman
anymore.
killed people in the comic books when he first started.
Yeah.
So.
When he first started, he killed people all the time.
This is the Batman from the 30s.
Yes, and that's you're right about that. And
Wait, Batman got started in the 40s.
30s.
Started in 39.
Well, as we watched Jack Nicholson here, what do you guys think about the two Jokers now? Do you guys like to compare the two? Or do you think it's really
You mean
unfair
the
to do
three
two?
Jokers? There are 3 Jokers.
Mark Hamill is the definitive Joker.
Mark Hamill is the definitive.
Is he from
Well, then I guess
the
that's 4
animated
Jokers.
series?
Yes, the animated series.
Well, now there's John DiMaggio. Too.
Okay, now they just
God
slept together,
almighty.
didn't they?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
They moved to it pretty quick, wouldn't you say?
She even
No,
says
it's
something
Bruce
about
Wayne.
that
Well,
later.
he is rich.
I think it's. I think the question of whether or not they slept together is a little fuzzy because she was
No,
very
because
drunk.
she says I slept with you. I
She
can't
does say
believe
it
I
later.
did
Right,
that.
but she was very drunk. And do you
They
think Bruce Wayne would take advantage of a drunk girl? I don't
Yes.
think so.
She wasn't
know,
that drunk.
It's interesting, and we were talking, we were kind of talking about something else when this came on. But I was surprised at how predatory Bruce Wayne was with her.
By the way, this pissed me off. Even as like a child, this
Well, it's
pissed
a bit
me
much
off.
having him hanging there like that, I would think.
Ridiculous.
But okay, so like what? Between
So the question
this
is, which
and
is the
Heath
definitive
Ledger,
Joker?
Streamlining it between Jack Nicholson and Heath Ledger. Not what's the definitive or whatever, but Josh's question was, what do you? think?
Which do you prefer? Which do you think hits the right note?
Well, Heath Ledger because he's in a much better movie,
well-
that Joker needs to be in that movie.
Hold on. This is an issue here because I would argue that the Joker was a terrible character.
Okay, yeah.
I did not care for the Joker as a character in the comic books. I thought he was ridiculously overused. People's obsession with him was always very strange to me because every scene with the Joker in the comic books or the animated series, I thought that's a little hackneyed and kind of stupid. And the villain that I thought really, really worked was Ra's al Ghul. And when Ra's al Ghul was the villain for Batman Begins, I was like, wow, that's fantastic. That is the right villain. But he's dead now. What are they going to do? And when I heard the Joker, I thought, I don't know how that's going to make that work. How he's going to make that work. And then I saw the Dark Knight, and I was like, okay, well, there, he made the Joker work. And that's it. That's the end of the Joker because Heath Ledger's dead now. So the Joker as a character should die because he sucks.
I mean, there's been some great Joker stories, and I think there is a way to use
So
them.
there's the Killing Joke?
Killing Joke.
Can you think of a second one?
Mask of the Phantasm.
Oh, please.
The Dark Knight Returns.
Dark Knight Returns.
Return of the Joker.
It's one of those things where with the Joker, it depends on who your Joker was at the start. If you are a Adam West Batman, then the Jack Nicholson Joker is close, not close enough, but it's pretty close when you compare Heath Ledger's Joker because it's completely different. Mm-hmm. But the Joker, like Batman, changes as he needs to for his movies, and I actually have no problem with this Joker. Like I thought I wouldn't like this Joker. I did, but he's wacky. He just needs a mustache.
I think
this is somewhere
tone and feel of this movie.
Because the Joker in the Adam West show is never kind of menacing the way that this particular. I mean, this one is somewhere between those two extremes. The realism of Heath Ledger versus just the broad camp of Cesar Romero. I never this never really clicked with me as the Joker, but and Heath Ledger, it's a better movie and it's a better performance, but I don't think it's a better Joker. Like going back to my I don't really care for the realistic approach. The Joker as a psychotic who smears paint on his face is less interesting to me than the guy whose skin got bleached by being dropped in a vat of acid or whatever chemicals it was. There's a difference in Batman actually being responsible for the Joker's creation as opposed to he's a random unknown psycho that wandered in. In that universe, Nolan's universe, the guy getting dropped in the chemicals doesn't work. That's one of the reasons why I like that universe less, because this is just kind of more interesting to me to see the Joker that is not real, that can't be real.
I use that line all the time. We've got a live one here. There's stuff from this movie that I didn't know affected me. Like, oh shit! And that's this scene here is they actually redo it in Dark Knight. When you think about it, want to see a magic trick?
Oh, there's no question that there's a lot of weird parallels between this and Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Sure.
Which I think is actually really funny because those parallels are all perfect examples of how dumb the scenes in this movie are.
I'm sure that Goyer and Jonathan Nolan, at least, were very familiar with these movies and a lot of other Batman stories going into writing Dark Knight, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if they had used this or elements of this as some sort of inspiration. when it came to making those movies.
I get the impression that they regularly write things that are not that great, and Christopher Nolan doesn't know why, but he says no to things over and over and over again until they come up with like a version that works really well, and they go, "All right, let's go with that."
That's been your theory with David Goyer for a very long time, and there's evidence to support it.
But I'm including Jonathan Nolan into that paradigm for these movies.
Okay. So.
Just missed one of the best lines of the movie right there.
Where he does his Jack Palance impersonation.
Yeah, you are my number one, a guy.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
That's good stuff.
Mm-hmm. He's really
now,
good.
Did the scene here too.
What about this scene?
I like this little scene where he's talking to the dead guy, and this all works for me. Most of this bit does, but this is not. There's something about this Joker that I don't like, and I can't quite put my finger on it. I think it comes from the fact that we see Jack Napier before, and he wasn't really that crazy. I'm not sure how acid makes you crazy. So
that's what I was going to ask you.
The same way it makes your skin white and your hair green.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. Did the chemicals affect his brain too, or was it? Was he just always nuts?
Really true.
No, he might have just snapped. I mean, what's the explanation in Killing Joke? I forget.
There's like two.
Well, Killing Joke's not the official origin,
right?
But that's the point.
No,
it's a.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. It's always been that the classic one was getting bleached and all of that made him crazy. In the Killing Joke, it's that one bad day.
But it is sort of underlined. There is that line, like if the Joker could, choose his origin story, he'd be multiple choice.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it is part of it. And like I think that's why in the Nolan-verse the Joker's origin is sort of an amorphous quantum interference pattern. It's not a particular thing.
I like that aspect, and I thought that was a nice thing to pick up from the comics. But the one thing that is consistent in the comics is, who he was before he was the Red Hood changes, but it's Batman is chasing him down in the factory, and he jumps in and comes out the Joker. So it is Batman very literally creating him, and in part because of the Batman's whole MO is to strike terror in the hearts of criminals, and he struck terror in the heart of a relatively innocuous criminal and turned him into a psychotic killer that's been his biggest thorn. So there's a strange guilt association that Batman would have with the Joker, because he is very literally responsible for everyone who's ever died because of the Joker.
But they've also sort of expanded.
That's something that's lost.
But they had, in by this point in the history of the character, they had actually expanded the concept of Gotham City to include the idea that the reason there are costume supervillains is because there's a costume superhero.
Oh, sure, and they have kind of broadened that. But that's still kind of a large scale thing, whereas with Batman, it is intimately one man is responsible for the creation of another man, and that's, I think, the idea of having the Joker then responsible for the creation of Batman here. I think that doesn't work for me, because there it just becomes too sort of trite. In the comics, I kind of like the way that it works, and I mean I understand it for this movie because it makes everything tight and wrapped up.
Yeah.
But having it with the comics with a larger canvas, there's just no point to that.
Well, then
I love The Dark Knight, and I think it is the best of all of these movies. I'm just saying, specifically in terms of the Joker, I prefer what we got, and maybe a little bit of it is being something of a purist, because I did like the other Joker. Unlike Max, he's one of my favorite villains.
Well, I remember as a kid, after seeing this movie and hearing somebody say that they did not like that Napier had killed Bruce's parents, I remember thinking, that's odd, because that sort of like Mobius strip of responsibility appealed to me. And I since grew out of it. But I do actually understand the idea that this is necessary for the movie.
I didn't like it when they ripped it off years later in Daredevil, but...
I don't even remember Daredevil.
Well, Justin, you initially proposed the question about Tim Burton. What do you think his effect was on the movie? Well, Justin will get back to us hopefully
happened?
soon. But what do you guys think of these mimes here? Do you think this is a bit much, a bit too over the top?
I think when you're dealing with the Joker, over the top is not possible.
Okay.
The only thing that bothers me about it really is that we don't see where this gang came from. This is not the
Can
same
you guys
gang
hear me
that
now?
Jack Napier was
Yeah, we can
hanging
hear you.
around with.
I was
I don't
asking
know what's
about
going on with my microphone. I've heard the whole thing. I've been here. My microphone's being funny. Well, Josh, you were asking me about the Tim Burton thing.
Yeah. You proposed the question. What's your what are your thoughts?
Well, I think his influence comes in a couple different ways. First and most notably is visually. That this movie seems like it's. I mean, this is a poor scene to cite an example, but there's plenty of other parts where it's just all gray. It's almost black and white with a little bit of color, nighttime stuff. But Tim Burton, he's so goth and everything, and I just get so tired of it. Gotham City doesn't have to be goth, but aside from that, Tim Burton.
You'd think it would have to be required. It is in the name.
Well, not this kind of goth. I mean,
yeah.
It's too much. It's just too much. I love that he got shot. But he's also drawn to these, and Pee Wee Herman. Someone mentioned Pee Wee's Big Adventure is no different. He's drawn to these characters that are outcasts. Scissorhands, Pee Wee, Bruce Wayne. They're all outcasts from society in some way, and I feel like
Bruce Wayne isn't, and even Batman isn't. He's accepted by the cops.
Not,
I mean,
this
well, that's sort of
he ostracizes himself from society, and
I think he's attracted to the Joker because he's an outcast.
Yeah, maybe so, but Tim Burton definitely has a draw to that sort of thing, and I think he goes a little too far with the Bruce Wayne character for that. And someone earlier was pointing out how he seemed to be too aggressive, the character of Bruce, with Vicky Vale the night they slept together, and I got to say that was right. He was too aggressive. It wasn't in his character. I don't know what that was all about. To me that brings up the age-old debate: who's the real person? Is it Batman or is it Bruce? Who's the real guy? Who's the mask? In my opinion, Batman is the real person, and Bruce Wayne, Batman, whoever, he wouldn't have cared about bagging Vicky Vale. That's of no concern to him whatsoever. But he seemed genuinely interested in her, and this is not something I want to see in Bruce Wayne as a character. I want to see him be used to just keep the question of where Batman or what Bruce Wayne does with his time, just a big question mark to people. But
I know what you're saying, because there's an aspect of it. If he was just trying to bang the reporter because she's hot and that would support his story of being a playboy, that would be one thing. But he does actually seem to like her, which is why I think that he probably didn't screw her.
But that's I think that he did, because
he did.
Yeah, but that is a problem with like all of these movies, like even to some extent, the Nolan ones, which is they feel the need, and of course it's a Hollywood thing, to give Batman a love interest.
Well, that's what proves he's not gay.
But I like that about Batman Begins, is that even though Rachel Dawes, she does fit the love interest role, she was definitely his friend for many years, and they I don't think there was any indication that they ever consummated that feeling for each other. So it was just kind of a long distance longing, and it obviously didn't work out for either one of them in the end.
Although you imagine that at some point in their like late teens or early 20s, they probably just had one or two nights.
Because he was gone.
No, I don't think so.
No?
Yeah, he was gone. He was gone.
Well, they were really? Was it
No.
at that point?
No, she was almost like a sister to him for a long time, and
Yeah, that never stops anyone.
Well, I agree
I agree with
was
Max.
Katie.
It was Katie Holmes.
The thing
Yeah.
that I
Holmes is
think
smoking.
that this
Bruce
all
Wayne's
male-
a dude. He may have been a dude that went through a traumatic childhood, but
Yeah.
it did not
I don't-
affect his
I
growing
don't think
gonads.
they consummated their feelings for each other. at
I
all.
don't think so
The,
either.
the thing that I think this all male panel is forgetting is that there has to be an access point for women. And that's why these female
Yeah,
characters
but
are
they're all
there.
horrible
in the movie.
access points.
I know they're horrible.
Well,
That's what
But
Jerry
they-
Hall is for, isn't it?
But that's what they feel the need to do, is put a female character in there so there's something for them to do.
I don't.
That's why we have Twilight.
I don't buy into that concept in general because people are always saying that about movies and TV shows and everything. Every single form of storytelling. People are always saying you need like a character for the audience. That doesn't matter. Like I don't care like what race or sex or age a character is.
Oh, you're absolutely right when it comes to art form, but financially, you want women to like this. You want women to have a way in. You try for it because women drive movies.
I believe that is a thought process for marketers, but I do not believe that real women actually give a shit about women being in a movie.
No, they don't.
I don't think they consciously do, but I think that there is there. And I think the way that it is done here is very, very bad. And it is just, okay, we need to appeal to women. We throw a woman in, and that's what appeals to women.
Oh, my God.
That's not what appeals to women. But I think they have figured out what does much more so than they did at this time, which is throwing someone who screams every 5 minutes and gets saved.
Yeah,
that doesn't work.
We're in a part of the movie that I completely forgot about, but it really bugged the hell out of me when I realized how stupid it was. There's one chick in this movie who is not the Joker's girlfriend, and we've met her, and Batman's had sex with her, possibly, and the Joker sees a picture of her and suddenly becomes her stalker. That is the height of improbability.
You say Nuclear Man, I was thinking the same thing.
It's Nuclear Man.
I fell in love with her, yeah.
Where's the woman?
Yeah. I don't understand why that is acceptable to have this level of coincidence.
I don't understand why Vicky Vale and Bruce Wayne even bothered to hook up in this movie. I mean, yeah, they're both attractive people, but what the hell do they have in common? I mean, nothing. I mean, chemistry? There's nothing there.
I can buy them getting together in this movie.
Yeah, but Bruce, oh, come on. She seems like such a...
Bruce just wouldn't care about her. That's the thing. He's got other priorities.
I mean, there's that.
Well, but see, that's like one of the things, though, is as I had mentioned earlier about the Silver St. Cloud. That I mean, the Batman that is that asexual is a little bit more modern. And by modern I mean kind of like a post Dark Knight. This does bear a lot of similarities to the story where Batman did have a woman and she figured out who he was because she could tell by the shape of his chin. I mean, there have been lots of things like that in the comics. I mean, even Grant Morrison, recently sort of brought that back because he basically wanted to bring back a Batman that fucks. That's kind of the thing.
But that to me,
that was the old Batman from the comic books that I grew up with. I stopped reading them in the 80s, and Batman was dark and cool and everything, but Bruce Wayne was a millionaire playboy who screwed chicks.
Haven't you always just assumed that we weren't seeing Bruce Wayne having sex with the chicks he takes to movie premieres and whatnot? No. Because it's comic books and TV and you can't show screwing. But I mean, I always assumed that he was having sex with those girls so that they would then tell people, oh yeah, Bruce Wayne, he loves to snort cocaine and screw bonds.
Because there's that scene in Year One where he has Gordon come over to his house, and he's like, hey, and then he's got the chick next to him and everything.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, you can go now.
You just assume that he does that.
Yeah, it's kind of like in The Dark Knight when he's got all the ballerinas or whatever on the boat, and he really just doesn't care. He's on a mission.
Yeah.
But I mean, you assume that every once in a while.
And Year One is a special thing, though.
You'd assume that every once in a while he screws one of those girls, just so that when the girls get together, when he's not around and start talking, none of them go, hey, it's weird that he's never had sex with any of us. Maybe something's up with him.
That's why I like Catwoman. The idea of him being involved with Catwoman. It's like he found her and got attracted to her as Batman, and not as Bruce Wayne.
But the problem there is it's Catwoman and Batman, and Bruce Wayne still seems like a homosexual. And you can't have that. Plain and simple. So Bruce Wayne has to fuck chicks. Period.
Oh, we're entering into the part of the movie where Batman pretends he's a detective, as though he still has that aspect of his character, but he fucking doesn't.
Yeah.
This is not the Ace of Detectives here.
Well,
Detective
do you guys
comics.
understand the Joker's overall motive with the chemicals and altering them and infecting Gotham? I mean, what was his ultimate goal, though? I was trying to figure this out. It's
the Joker.
To kill people with smiles.
Goal that is a rational one.
So he's just nuts? Well, I love this bit.
Yeah, he's just nuts. He is there to bring chaos and to stir the shit.
By the way, I
And
don't
that's
wear
what
makeup,
the-
and I don't look as bad as that guy. What the hell?
Yeah, I was
I
like,
didn't
what's
get this
wrong
joke.
with these people?
I didn't get this joke when I was a kid, but I think it's hilarious now.
I never noticed the hair. I noticed the pimples, but I never noticed the hair. I never knew what frizzy was. I heard it in commercials like every day as a kid, but like I never knew what it was until like Thursday.
So how?
Billy D still looks great.
Yeah, he still uses
So does
some
Mayor
body.
Koch.
Man,
so
you
how do you-
cannot stop Billy D.
How do you guys think Billy D. Williams would have been as Two-Face had they done that like they should have?
You cannot stop Billy
He's a
D.
terrible actor.
You
I don't
are
think he would have worked at all in
freaking
Batman Forever.
insane. What is your problem?
I don't think
oh
it
my
would have worked any
God.
less than the one that
Well,
was in
I'm
there.
not saying in Batman Forever, but like let's say Tim Burton made a third Batman movie, and he put
Okay, hold on.
he had Two-Face as the villain.
Hold on, I know what you're asking here, and I'm just gonna say this out loud, okay? All right, our nerd cred is on the line here. We have to not answer this question.
Why?
That's how it works.
I don't understand.
That's how it works.
I think he would have made Harvey Dent too disco.
I think he actually probably would have been able to pull it off, and it would have probably been okay at best. But I think the masses, especially, would have shouted that down. Like when they said Spider-Man might be black, oh my God, make
Nobody
Two-Face a
cares
black
about
guy.
Harvey Dent.
That pissed me off so much. Donald Glover would have been awesome.
I was
Yeah,
thought
but
Billy
not
D
more
was an
awesome
odd
than
choice.
Donald Glover would have been awesome as
No.
Spider-Man.
Donald
Was he up
Glover
for
would
that?
have been.
That's awesome.
No, that was the rumor, and everybody was talking about it, and it was a really big deal, and everybody who was racist suddenly went crazy. But everybody who thought that would be funny, and then realized that Donald Glover is a good actor, realized that fucking who cares? Let's make it Donald Glover, see what happens.
Who's Donald Glover?
He's the black guy on Community.
See, there we go. But Billy D,
And he's a stand-up comedian, and he's,
Billy
and
D,
he's
they would have
really
made the
funny.
evil side into a white guy.
that would have been funny.
Oh, a
You guys
racist white
remember-
guy.
Do you guys remember the rumors either when this one came out or Returns? I don't know which one. That there was rumors that Damon Wayans was going to play
That
Robin.
wasn't rumors.
Yeah.
I think that's.
I think he
confirmed,
actually
yeah.
got. I think he actually got paid.
That
He
was
was-
it was
yeah.
that close, really?
And actually,
Yeah, he got paid. Yeah.
and Christian
I think it
Bale.
was returns.
Christian Bale auditioned for Robin for Batman Forever.
Damon Wayans?
Yeah,
doesn't he
Alex.
seem too?
No.
Doesn't he seem like he would have been too old?
No.
No,
Not at
then.
the time.
Wasn't he in his like
Seems like he would have been
20s?
too terrible.
So okay.
No,
so
well,
now
Jason
we're into
Uncle
this.
it was an old Robin.
He was an old. Yeah.
I mean, they couldn't make it a kid.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't
Okay.
really know how old Chris O'Donnell was. I've always assumed he was like in his teens, but I guess
No,
he
he
must have been
wasn't.
older.
No.
Okay, so now this scene here. Okay.
Well, this is the
Damon
best
Wayans
scene in
would
the
have been
movie.
yeah.
his
Say what
30s.
you want about the rest of this movie and everything, but
Bat
you just take
Dance is
this-
awesome.
Bat Dance is awesome.
This is awesome. Yeah.
you just
and how
take
did
this
okay,
scene.
Can I ask you guys how the hell did Prince get involved with this movie?
Because it was the right. I mean, tell me that's not the perfect
Because he was
choice. I
signed to
mean,
Warner Music.
this to me is like the
point.
the like
Because there's a lot of
quintessential-
purple in it, and he loves purple.
It's like the quintessential '80s movie, and I think that
Why
having
were they standing
Prince,
against the railing?
I think having Prince do the music is like a perfect choice. I don't know.
Yeah, but this is a
was
detective
miserable.
gothic fantasy in Prince. I mean,
It's weird.
What? I'm like a traditional musical score by Danny Elfman is great. We never even mentioned the theme, which is I dare say iconic now, is the modern Batman theme. I mean, the Nolan films have good music, but they don't have the Batman theme.
Yeah, they
I
don't
mean,
have
this
the theme,
movie
yeah.
has the Batman theme. And
You
then
know what
you
else is
have Prince in
iconic?
here
That boombox.
doing Bat Dance. I mean, come on.
It's
I mean, one of the things that we haven't talked about with this movie, beyond just the movie itself, but how groundbreaking it was in sort of its marketing, and you basically had Prince do an entire album of all new material
yeah.
tied into this movie. I mean, it's a Prince album, and it's just tangentially connected. And before this movie, they didn't really do that as much. Now, hell, there's soundtrack albums that are just inspired by, and the music isn't even in the movie.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a very calculated. We can get. I mean, they released the Prince soundtrack before they released the Elfman soundtrack. I mean, it has the movie poster as the cover, and the Elfman soundtrack actually just has a shot from the thing. So there was very much this is going to sell albums. Remember the merchandising on this? This was insane. This was
Everything had a Batman logo. Everything had a
Yeah.
bat face.
Yeah, I mean,
Which,
it was.
and
Cereal
honestly,
boxes had Batman
I
busts.
kind of miss
I
that,
have them.
and that's
I
why
know.
I am enjoying my Dark Berry Batman Mountain Dew right now, because I love the fact that there is still some of that there. But getting back to how it works, because it does work. You wouldn't think it would work having Prince music in here, but I think the reason why it does work is because all of that music is associated with Joker. It's always Joker playing the music.
Yeah.
There's like the love theme where you don't have him actually singing it until the end credits, but you just play it underneath, and it's just like a piano, instrumental, and that's fine, but it does work. And as far as the marketing is concerned, I just need to get this out because I got it on the last one, but I just need to state it again. Yes, Batman is wearing Nike Air Trainer 3s in this
Go to
movie.
hell.
I'm just saying. He is, okay? And you can get them occasionally. They release them every once in a while, so do that.
Oh.
Anyway.
Well, I think you're right. Yeah, I mean, it is the Joker who plays the Prince music. Still, I just found it odd that
it's odd.
Prince was brought into it. That's all.
It's odd.
Of all the modern musical artists,
I think
Prince,
it's more odd that Prince would choose to do it more so than someone would want.
Yeah,
to
I mean,
do it. But
the best sense I heard was Damon when he said he loves purple, and there's purple in this movie.
That seems to be all the logic that he would need.
It seems to be because that guy is, Prince is off. He's off his rocker. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's batshit crazy. So
Well,
there's the tie.
the thing is, I don't think he was at this point.
When did Highlander come out?
86.
86, I think.
So 3 years before this, Queen did
Okay, that's
album?
don't
Yeah.
even do
Okay,
that.
but you can-
Queen
That's
is
awesome,
awesome.
man.
You can
Queen
put
is
Queen
awesome.
in anything, and it's
And
awesome.
for our
Have you guys seen
overseas
Ted?
friends, it is radical and fantastic and brilliant. Prince is not even close to the level of Queen.
And Flash Gordon in 1980.
I will
Flash
bust out a
Gordon.
sword and we will fight over this because
Wait,
that's how
wait,
much I love Highlander.
Those Flash Gordon was actually really the score of the movie.
It was.
And the Queen stuff in Highlander was not crafted as an album.
It wasn't.
Those were tracks that were on other albums from what I understand.
Most of them.
They did not release a Highlander Queen soundtrack.
No, but it's a
They
kind
did
of
eventually.
magic. No, well, overseas or something they did, but yeah, no, you're right. It was all music off of It's a Kind of Magic. But if you listen to the songs, it's like "Don't Lose Your Head,"
Dude,
things that don't play. They play.
There are
clips from the
a
movie
lot of
in it.
songs
I mean,
very
you've
much
got-
about
you've
Highlander.
got what's his name? The guy, the Kurgan. What's his name? God damn it! What's his name?
Clancy
Brown?
Yeah, Clancy Brown. They're little like snippets of his dialogue in some of those songs and stuff.
But
like
they made money.
Who wants
off
to
of
live forever?
that. Yeah.
Awesome.
But it's Queen. Queen can do that because they're Queen.
Yeah, but they made money, and then somebody saw that they could make a shit ton of money, and then they said, "Hey, Prince."
sure.
This is a weird moment in this movie where she sees the woman's face and she gets freaked out because there's some white spots on her face. That's not really a huge deal. I don't understand why she's suddenly so terrified of the
she's
chick with
freaked
some
out-
white spots on her face.
She's freaked out because she knows that this is what Joker did to her, and
The dude's killed a bunch of people already.
But-
why is she scared about her face?
It did seem like a bit of an
She's a very pretty
overreaction for her. Yeah, even with the crap on her face, she's still attractive.
Well, what do you guys think about Kim Basinger in this movie?
She's amazing. She's 35 in this.
Seriously?
Really?
Wow.
I kind of preferred her performance in My Stepmother's and Alien.
I thought you were going to say L.A. Confidential, but
She spends
Well,
way
that's-
too much
I
time
guess my
screaming.
stepmother's
She was
name.
great.
Well,
in
this
that.
was
for sense.
she does. Well, she just screams. Well, she was supposed to be Sean Young, right?
Yeah.
I don't know,
Wait,
guys.
what?
No,
Sean
that
was
that
trying
was
to be
Returns.
Catwoman.
No, Sean
No,
Young was
No,
cast
there,
here.
Not
there
Bending
was
was
there was
Returns.
that Sean Young phase.
No, Sean Young fell off a horse. She was supposed to be in this movie.
Yeah.
She was
was
supposed to be
cast.
Vicky Vale. Yeah.
She didn't fall off.
Yeah,
a
it
horse.
was Return. With Returns, you're thinking of the fact that she dressed up as Catwoman.
Catwoman.
And went in.
Right,
Yeah.
but she was
and-
cast as Vicky Vale in this movie.
She was. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what's weird? This thing vanished from Batman's canon, chronology, everything, and then it reappeared in the recent Batman games. in
What
Arkham
disappeared?
Asylum.
This
The line
uh,
gun.
This wonderful
Yeah.
toy.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
is an
Arkham
awesome
City.
thing. I love that thing, and then it popped up in Arkham Asylum, and in Arkham City you use it all the time.
See, these are the kind of comic book elements, that this movie maybe needs. I mean, look at the fact that all these, cars are painted purple and green, and it's just this does remove you from reality because what goons would bother to do this, in real life?
The thing is,
Well-
the paint would take so much time.
Yeah, but you've got a crazy guy, who could just who could
That's
very
what removes
easily
it.
say like,
From the Dark Knight, which is
Right.
in more reality. This is completely hyper reality.
Sure.
This is absurd.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, the Joker customized his van, in Dark Knight because he would, but he's not going to take it to a shop and get it professionally detailed.
Yeah, I
These
know,
guys
but I mean,
have
look
the
at this.
Joker
They're
face
wearing jackets.
embroidered on their jackets.
Yeah, on
Yeah.
their jackets. Yeah, that is a bit
awesome.
much. I think.
I mean, that is a level of like branding that is really impressive. I mean, like they're really putting a lot of effort into making sure that everyone knows that we are a bunch of criminals and we have a defined brand, so that when people see us, they're gonna be like, "Hey," they know that we represent quality crime.
It's like the Warriors. You know, they all have their own clique. You know, the Batmobile. Come on, guys! One of the best vehicles in cinematic history.
It really is. Yeah, this
I
version
actually think it is
probably
the
my
best
favorite.
thing in all of Batman.
It is pretty sweet. This, I don't think I've ever seen a cooler looking car than the Batmobile.
See, that's
Did
interesting.
everybody want a Batmobile when they were a kid?
Yeah.
I remember
What do you mean when you were a kid? I want one now.
when I saw the animated series Batmobile, like I thought that this was the awesomest car, and then I saw the animated series Batmobile, and I was like, "Oh, that's better."
No, I
That
think
replaces
this one's
it.
better.
Did you notice that when the Batman Beyond, the Wayne, what do you call that thing? The Wayne limousine is actually the Batmobile just turned upside down from the animated series. I don't know.
I don't remember
I
the
did
Wayne
not notice
limousine
that, but-
from Batman Beyond.
But
Yeah,
we'll take your
it's-
word for it, though.
Dude,
It's
that's
there.
totally right. That I remember that thing that you just said. That's accurate and awesome because I remember that thing.
My wife collects Batmobiles. And she desperately wants one of these. But it's like $1,300.
You must have a really big garage.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, I'm
what
sure
really
you can find a
sucks?
cheap toy on eBay.
Yeah, probably.
It's
God knows they made
weird.
enough.
Where do you get all these wonderful toys?
Actually,
Sorry.
I think I have a micro machine of this Batmobile.
I have a really cool, like, foot-long die-cast metal version of it. It's flipping awesome.
Yeah, see,
Flipping?
yeah, that sounds cool.
Flipping.
We've already
Justin,
broken the
what do you
swear
think,
barrier on this commentary.
Batmobile versus the Tumbler. What do you think?
I think this Batmobile is fan-friggin-tastic. And
Yeah, which one would I
awesome.
rather drive in a practical sense, or which one is actually just fucking cool?
I think this one
And,
is
and
fucking
the answer is the one from the Adam West TV show.
No.
Oh, that one is fucking cool. I'll give you that. But I think this one is, if you want to compare it to the Tumbler, I think the Tumbler is absolutely appropriate for that universe, and I think this one is appropriate for this universe. I don't think this Batmobile would have worked in the Nolanverse, although I think the Tumbler could have worked in here.
I think the Lamborghini works better as a Batmobile in the Nolan universe than the. I just don't care for the Tumbler.
I think the Tumbler's awesome, but on a completely unrelated but sort of connected note, there is recently a YouTube video of people testing the relative speeds of the '60s campy Batmobile and this movie's Batmobile in a race, and the '60s one beats
Really?
by a
that
small
was-
margin because it's apparently an actual sports car underneath
is.
the chassis.
It is. It does not.
No, it's based on the Futura concept car, I think, and this one is a Corvette underneath. I'm sure.
It's actually a Chevy Impala.
Really?
I
The
kid you not.
'66.
No, this one.
That's
This
what,
one is a Chevy Impala.
Yeah.
That's what the Winchesters drive.
And those shoes
The
are
one
Nike
that's in
Air
this movie
Trainer
is
3s.
actually not that good. If you notice, when you see it going fast, it's sped up film, and there's a lot of scenes of it cornering because it was. I mean, this movie had a decent sized budget for its time, but it was this was not like a mammoth thing, and they had a lot to build and a short period of time. So this is not as well constructed a car as you would get. This is a completely different car than the one that's in Batman Returns, even though it looks the same.
Yeah.
Although if
But
from-
there they had time to like build something that wasn't going to fly apart if they hit 70 miles an hour.
Like,
Well,
I-
it looks-
This is
it
a Chevy
looks-
Caprice mixed with a Buick Riviera with a Corvette engine. That's what it is.
But it looks like a plastic shell on a car.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, true.
But like I mean I don't remember the stats because I don't know anything about cars, but I remember when
Just say that
Batman
it was 7.
When Batman Begins came out, they said that the Tumbler was a 7, and that and everyone was like, "Isn't that impressive?" And I'm like, "That sounds really impressive." But then when I was watching the behind the scenes special features on this, they were like, "Oh well, this Batmobile from the '89 Batman is a 7." And it sounded like even though the Tumbler was built for like real world applications, this could essentially do what that could do.
Okay, the thing is, none of that matters, okay? Because Batman drives around in a bunch of crazy environments, and there is such a small gap between the tires and the body that if he was going over any significant, like terrain,
Yeah,
the car would stop, would grind to a halt. The Tumbler has giant wheels. It's big, open body. It's super strong looking. It's got amazing suspension. That's a car that can handle what Batman does with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, he drives on
that's what you would
roofs.
really
He
want.
just drives around town, though.
He drives on roofs
drives over
in
roofs.
in the Batman movies nowadays.
The one in
Oh, yeah.
Batman Forever can go up walls.
What?
The one in Batman Forever can go up walls.
It can.
Let's
Same
not
as being pulled
speak
by a
of
rope.
that.
Yeah. Well, this piece of music here, this is I think this, well, to me, this is the strongest part of the whole score, Descent into Mystery. I don't know if you guys remember the score.
It's a this is a great.
But
piece.
this scene here, this is what Batman should be. It's called Descent into Mystery. You know, she's looking at him, she doesn't know who he is, he's kind of in shadow. Like, that's what makes Batman interesting, like the mystery. And then in Returns, you get him driving around town like a beat cop, you know, looking for crimes. And I'm like, this is boring. I'm like, I don't want to see Batman like this.
This is a really weird thing. This is like the first time I was aware of Batman having an opening to the Batcave. Like, you always assumed that he had to have one, but you never really saw
In the
it.
Adam West series.
Yeah, the TV
Adam
show.
Barely.
Yeah, that's not an opening.
But it didn't look real. Like, it was ridiculous. A car split in half and then reformed.
But,
That's insane.
But getting back to what Josh was saying here, I think a big part of this them being able to sell the descent into mystery and what have you, and instead of Batman driving around like a beat cop, is seeing it from Vicky Vale's perspective. I think like a key to this whole thing working is Kim Basinger's performance. She's really freaking good in this movie.
Apparently she's nuts.
What?
Nothing.
Okay.
Just a rumor.
All right, and
That's what Alec Baldwin says.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm
lot.
sure we can take him as a reliable.
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, she's our eyes into Batman's world,
And-
she wants to know sort of
Well,
we understand that.
and Robert
Right.
Wool.
Well,
Oh, yeah,
no,
that
but
too.
I would say more her for sure. Robert Wool he's just there.
That's a really weird concept. I've never thought of that. I don't really see this. The idea of the soundtrack being like this track being called Descent into Mystery seems absurd, because this is going back to a place we've already been. This is a place
Well,
we've
this is
been
mystery
before in
to
the
her.
movie.
You know, this is Descent into Mystery.
Yeah, but she's like,
who
we're the
cares
audience.
what the name of the
She's dumb.
of the track is? I mean, it's I don't know, and I do
I always,
agree that like
just for a second, look at how thick the mask is in this scene. This is where I really noticed just how much rubber is piled up on Michael Keaton's head.
I
He
always,
looks good in it, though.
as a kid, I always assumed, like, I would get
is
into
thick.
arguments over whether or not the suit's bulletproof, and like the idea of its thickness always seemed to sort of reinforce the possibility that underneath that there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then he tears it off one-handed in Batman Returns. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true.
True.
And then I always think of, why don't they just shoot him in the face, like in Blank Man? Shoot him in the face.
Yeah, you got
Yeah.
that's got to be
spoiler
bulletproof.
for Blank Man now.
yeah,
Oops.
thanks, Josh.
I think that the statute of limitations on Blank
There
Man
is no
spoiler.
statute of limitations on spoilers.
There's got to
or
be.
murder.
Oh, by the
You're
way,
like
I
a
wanted to bring
murderer.
this up. There should be a spoiler alert color coding system, like the terror alert system, but for spoilers. And I'm going to write up a document about that, but I'm going to have on that document spoilers,
That's a decent idea.
I like
Okay.
the little teddy bear on her bed.
because I'm going to have
I
to use
like that she's
examples.
feeling her boob.
Wouldn't
Yeah,
you?
that was too.
If you had her boobs, wouldn't you do the same?
All
Yeah, it's an
day
interesting
long.
zoom in there.
I wouldn't
Yeah,
even
it
leave the
was.
house.
It was a very strange little
It was
shot.
odd.
They
Yeah,
do
it was-
they do it again when they smash the
Okay, so why didn't anybody mention the fact that there were bats all around the cave and then he had one in a cage for no apparent reason?
It's Tim Burton.
Because
I know.
those
the
bats
king
are
bat.
wild bats. That other bat is his friend Batty, who he bought at a pet store for exotic, weird, stupid pets that carry diseases and shit.
I mean,
He
why
keeps
does he
it in the
park his
cage
car
to
on
protect
a,
it from the wild.
He does not get a lot of customers, that pet
Why does he park his
store.
car in a cliff inside the cave? Is it a little dangerous? I mean,
Oh, that's my favorite thing. That in the new movies, Underground Railroad, that the Wayne family was part of that. Like, I know it's in the comic books at some point in history, but that is the best thing ever. It explains
And-
the cave.
And one thing which no one's ever, that I haven't heard anyone talking about leading up to this new movie, which I'm quite excited about, is we're probably going to get to see the Batcave, right?
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But I mean, like, I'm not like a fan of the Batcave. I'm just a fan of like it being plausible.
Yeah.
And like
wait
those
a
like
minute. I've seen the
chasms.
Batcave already.
Those freaking
Well, before they built it.
in
they
Begins.
went into the cave and they're like, this would be a really good place for a hideout.
Well, no, I mean, he has it in Begins.
Yeah, he does. There's a cave in there.
Yeah,
There's literally a cave.
No, look,
but we're going to
there's-
get to see a cave with a giant computer. With
But
a
there's not
screen
gonna be a giant
which is
fucking
bigger than
penny on the
37
wall.
Inches. Oh, you never know.
There's not going to be a giant fucking penny on the wall.
Do you guys
It's
really
like
want to see
7
Bruce
years.
Wayne like this, chilling out in the Batcave, not as Batman? Don't you think that takes away from the mystery of Batman, guys?
I said on
A
Batman
little odd,
Returns, I would love this show. If this was a show, I would watch every episode.
I'd watch every
Well,
episode.
I mean, I
more
think
on
you
that
see that a lot in the
stuff.
comics. He's just wearing the Batman costume without the mask.
Right, yeah.
To me, that's when he
Yeah,
is who he really is, when he's somewhere between Batman and Bruce Wayne. Both of them are different masks.
Like, it's weird. Like, when they had Azrael as Batman, like, wasn't his thing that he would never take off the costume even when he was in
Yeah.
the cave because he was, like, always wanted to be in character.
Azrael's a ridiculous character and
I
doesn't
like
really
that.
hold
Well,
up
I mean,
under
that was
modern
like my
eyes.
first-
Very method.
But like
That
Bruce
was like
Wayne,
my first Batman comic, so, you know, I'm
people
into
always
that.
say, like,
I'm
you know,
sorry.
which one is the real guy? He's the guy that Alfred knows.
Right, yeah, no, that's totally it. Yeah.
He wears a Batman costume, but he's not really that guy, and he's not really the playboy. He's the guy that Alfred knows.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Well,
see
Justin-
that Bruce all the time.
Yeah. Well, Justin,
The
you were saying about Bruce not sleeping with her. Do you recall that? Yeah, Justin dropped off again.
How does this keep happening?
I don't know.
He says he
But
has microphone
my point was like, do
problems.
you guys even think? Because I don't think he would even bother with Vicky Vale. I mean, what attraction would he even have to her? Why would he come over here? Why would he want to spill his guts to this woman, reveal the biggest secret of his life to someone he hardly knows? Just
That's
because,
love,
I mean,
man.
she's hot, sure.
It's how
but
your
I
heart
mean,
goes.
It's because she's the third name in the credits.
Right.
well,
The
I think
heart
that's
wants what the heart
that's
wants.
the realistic reason.
It's the
but I mean,
actual
in this
answer,
movie-
and as an audience, we pretend that it's plausible, but most romances we don't really buy. We just kind of go, I guess they're in love.
well, that's completely untrue.
I
What are you
can
talking
see,
about?
Running Man.
I can
Well,
see the
you're just pulling
connection
stuff out of
here.
your ass, Max. Come on,
Oh,
that doesn't make sense.
please.
Because we do realize that Bruce Wayne is a crazy person.
I mean, are you talking about in movies or just?
I
in
don't
general?
subscribe to that theory, but okay.
I don't think that Bruce. No, I agree to a great extent. I think Bruce Wayne is a guy who has a lot of psychological problems. He is a guy who is obsessed with a particular kind of crime. If he was really trying to solve the problems of Gotham City, he would not be focused on petty, violent street crime. And that sort of exemplifies the idea that he's obsessed with a particular sort of thing. He's monomaniacal. He doesn't really have a great sense of like what to do to solve the problems. Because Batman, not really doing a great thing for the overall crime in Gotham City.
He should be. Well, the Wayne Foundation has probably got all kinds of midnight basketball programs and stuff.
Right,
but
and
he
that would
also
be
beats
much
up
more
muggers.
significant.
What?
But that would be much more significant than Batman's contribution, which, to me, exemplifies how he's not crazy, but he is really close.
Oh no, he's crazy. There's
Well, I
no
mean-
doubt in my mind.
Well, Mike, you
Lots of
proposed
people
that.
have a
He's
tragedy where
Yeah.
they lose their parents early in life and they get over it. That's what the process of living is
Grieving.
supposed to do.
Yes.
Was
I don't
Zorro
think he's crazy. No, there's Zorro. He's a Latin
Was
lover.
the Shadow crazy? Well, the Shadow was crazy.
Well, Batman, no, he's not crazy. He's just got issues. He's trying to work out. That's all.
No, he's crazy because when you really think about it, he's a billionaire who decides to dress up in a fucking costume and fight muggers.
Well,
He
isn't
could
that what Christian
literally.
Bale says?
He's crazy because
He likes
He-
to beat people up.
right, like he could easily solve all of Gotham's crime problem by spending a little cash into the police force. Like he can actually affect things.
Well, I mean, the police is
price
one
of one
angle.
bat
I
plane
mean, this is
could
more of a
hire some
political
people.
thing. I mean, we could argue about the politics of how to solve crime rates, but I mean, like, he is obsessed with a particular strain of crime, which is peculiar. But it is the crime that cost him his parents.
And that's
he has
kind of
that,
the-
he
is what
needs that
Batman's
personal
doing-
satisfaction though.
Is what Batman doing justice or a strange kind of perverse vengeance?
I think
Reverse vengeance.
I
yeah,
think-
he needs
yeah.
that. It's part of his makeup.
it's a little bit of both. I think that the reason, like I've said this to Mike, we've had conversations off mic about this, but I think that the idea is he doesn't kill people because that's the only thing keeping him from becoming actually crazy. He knows he's obsessive. He's definitely an obsessive person, but he is not detached from reality.
I think it's more interesting if he does kill people. I mean, that there's a dividing line, between good and evil, and kind of like Catwoman, is she good or bad? But if he kills people,
Well, he just
but he
becomes the
does more good
Punisher,
than harm.
though.
See, I don't. I mean, I know this might make me sound bad. I actually don't think there'd be anything wrong if he was killing people, depending on which people.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
that's definitely the
Not
philosophical
innocent.
debate. I mean, people forever.
No, yeah, I mean,
If it was
Forever.
shoes,
Forever, people have said like if he were to kill Joker, he would save so many lives. If he were to
Wait,
just take out
is it-
Joker.
Isn't the definition of insanity doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a
not
different
clinically,
result?
no, but okay.
Can I call you guys to that screen for a moment? She's eating popcorn.
It's a strange.
Why the hell is she eating popcorn? And I know it's supposed to be a parallel between his parents getting shot with the popcorn falling on the ground, but come on, she's suddenly eating popcorn. Isn't that a little weird?
Have you had popcorn? It's fucking delicious.
Have you seen that popcorn?
now.
That popcorn has
Where
like
did it
no
come from?
yellow tint to it. There's no butter on that popcorn. That is shit popcorn. That is popcorn that she popped
don't know.
in her own popcorn popper in the kitchen.
there was
That is
this-
shit
there was
popcorn,
this
man.
Paul Newman microwavable stuff, which was all natural and all it had on it, and it was salt, and it was awesome. So, and it was probably around back in 1989. So I'm sure that's what it is. Let her eat her popcorn in peace.
Well, doesn't Michael Keaton seem more like a cross in this scene between Mr. Mom and Beetlejuice?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I don't really feel like he has a character as Bruce Wayne here. But you agree with me on that one, Tsyto? Yeah.
I haven't seen Mr. Mom or Beetlejuice.
I've seen both of those films.
Are you serious?
And
I've
Mr.
got
Mom
Beetlejuice
is
right
very
here.
funny. And
You live in this
Beetlejuice
world?
is one of the Tim Burton movies that I actually still enjoy.
But you have the Comedy Central network. I mean, they play Beetlejuice like every week.
I don't watch movies on, commercial television. Sorry. No.
Yeah.
I've
This
got,
was that was the most Keaton performance, I think.
Well, it's very Keaton-esque, but not Bruce Wayne-esque, don't you think? Would Bruce Wayne really act like that?
I mean, I think
It was
it's just a
definitely
matter
what
of
he does when he's
Tim Burton's Bruce Wayne does.
Yeah.
I
I
like
guess there's a difference.
I like the idea. I actually got into an argument about that particular moment, and somebody was like, "Oh, like he was, trying to, bust out his Batman skills, and he was going to use his fighting stuff." And I was like, "Well, no. If he was going to open up Batman, it's a can in his head. He can open it up, just pull that lid off. If he did that, he would become still and quiet and reserved
he
and
he
be
was
capable."
trying to provoke them
Right,
into.
I mean, I think that was an aspect of character. I mean, he was performing. He was
Yeah.
like, "I'm going to be a guy who would kill this dude." So he was
I know.
putting on that character.
Yeah.
I know that was a cap to the scene, but they probably could have done without it. I mean, it makes it look
No,
kind
I love
of
that.
unintelligent.
It's a great fall though.
The weird
she's
thing
really
is,
good
as a
at fainting.
The first time I saw this movie, that moment really worked for me. Second time I saw this movie, thought it came out way too late and too slowly. And that
I agree.
mannequin
it did.
hands.
It came in way too late.
But the
did.
first time it worked, and the second time I was like, "Whoa, that looks like a really stupid, crappy prop." That did
Oh,
not
you guys
come in
remember?
at the right
You guys
time.
remember these things here?
Yeah, Michael.
They don't exist anymore.
Microfiche.
Yeah.
Glasses make her smart.
Well, Justin, now that you're back, I was asking you
Yeah,
about.
I had to step away for a sec. What
Vicky
were you
Vale.
asking?
I asked you about, you opposed them sleeping together, and I did too. But what you thought of them, even him coming over and professing his love and almost revealing his secret identity. Do you really think it holds any water?
I don't like it. I don't like it at all. It goes right along with what I was saying before, that Bruce Wayne / Batman, whoever he really is, would not care about Vicky Vale, at least not this quickly. He would not be so quick to divulge his secret. The way he was with Rachel Dawes in the Nolan movies was more how I choose to see it. The only reason he felt as close to her as she did is because he grew up with her. Other than that, his closest emotional relationship is Alfred. That's it. And the man feels no emotional tie to most people. And I'm talking about the universe where there is no Robin and the extended Batman family. I don't like that. I think Mike or someone pointed out that Vicky Vale is here because the studio wanted Bruce / Batman to have a love interest, and I find her superfluous. And someone was pointing out that there's two girls in this movie. There's Vicky Vale and Jerry Hall, and it doesn't work. I actually like Kim Basinger. I kind of like her character in this, but I don't like Batman's Bruce's motivations connected to her. I don't like it.
To me, that seems like just that could be applied to almost every romance in almost every movie.
You could almost.
I mean, that's that's why in this movie I kind of just go, okay, because I usually have to. I mean, fucking William
It's hard
Shakespeare,
to-
Romeo and Juliet. He sees her from across the fucking room, and he's like, "I'm in love with her forever."
I don't understand how this guy is turning to the right and looking at
It's
the Joker.
problematic. It's also problematic that he's on the screen, which the right screen is what's on the air. The left screen is what's on standby. So technically, he's already on TV. So then when he moves his ears, wiping it off the truck. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
The thing is,
It works cinematically.
at the time, the technology to do that particular transition, that's sophisticated. Him pushing the screen off.
You needed a Grass Valley switcher.
Right, but I mean, could you do that
He was a
live?
spokesman for.
Yeah.
Could you do that live?
Oh yeah, you could do that.
You could do that live?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, Josh, to connect the Vicky Vale question, now that we've been watching this, and I don't know who said it, but it was something that was subconsciously bothering me about this movie for a long time. It's one of you guys hit the nail on the head, which is that, what was his name? Jack Napier, right? He was not Captain Crazy Pants the way the Joker is. To me, as we're rewatching this together right now, I'm finding it hard to enjoy the Joker because Napier was not this kind of crazy. And it's kind of like he's crazy this way because that's what we know Joker to be. For the same reason that, Batman Bruce Wayne has a love interest. It's like, it's just because. And I don't like that.
I thought it was insinuated that maybe the chemicals that he was dropped in had something to do with his mental state.
He's crazy. He's acting crazy because the comics say Joker's crazy, and that's fine. But we didn't need to see Napier be normal before.
The rationalization is that it's like when the Joker falls in the acid, it is his moment where his parents are shot and he has to become a different person.
Reborn.
So when he sees his reflection, that's where his notion of self is shattered because he's a freak now, and underneath his personality up until this point, he was always a murderer and kind of a dick, and the last thing he was holding on to is sort of like personality, a sense of self as being, a refined, criminal that wears a suit and is respectful is gone. So he's a maniac with a freakish face who's going to go out and kill as many people as possible because he's always kind of been headed there. He was just held back by being a person. He doesn't have that anymore.
I don't like Bruce wearing glasses. I don't like that.
Makes him too human.
I like the Bruce wears
Not only is
glasses
he
because
too human,
I wear
but-
glasses.
Well, and that's fine.
It pussifies him.
It does
No,
kind of pussify him. That's
It makes him look smart. I don't know how many times I have to say this.
He puts on the
make people-
glasses so that way you don't know he's Batman.
Look, he looked
There
the
you
most human to
Learn
me
that
in
from
Batman
Clark Kent.
Returns when he comes back from fighting Catwoman. He's sitting there on his work computer there, and he pulls off his glove and he puts his arms on his knees, and he's just beat ass tired. That he looked human, but I just don't like him in glasses. To me, it makes him A, too old, and B, too weak. Not that glasses make you weak, but Bruce Wayne in the comics, to my knowledge, does not wear glasses, just for reading or whatever. And we just didn't need it.
Well, I think
Bruce Wayne in the comics is like 6'4", 220 pounds.
He's a badass. Yeah.
the question of glasses, I don't think it's so much about whether or not it makes him look strong or weak. The question that bugs me is if he needs to wear glasses, then how does he have good sight as Batman?
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
That's the question.
He wears contacts when he's Batman.
But I mean, like
Clark
He
Kent.
wears a mask when he's Batman.
the fact is,
Could be reading glasses.
but he moves so fast. Contacts
but-
fall out. I mean, he gets punched all the time. Have you ever worn
Yeah,
contacts? They
contacts.
fall out.
Yeah, no, but does that mean that when he's fighting as Batman, or when he's driving as Batman, that means he can't see? I mean, he's...
And we know that there's no
actually
glass on the
prescription
mask.
glass in the Batmobile.
Well, that would mean he'd have to keep his head at a particular distance from the glass. But like
With that suit, that's easy.
in the modern suit, it works because you could say that there's like lenses in there because he does have stuff.
That
there
guy
now.
should have played Joker, not Jack Nicholson. That guy,
yeah,
He looks great.
This
doesn't
guy
he?
looks good.
he's scary.
And, with this reveal on screen, I mean, flashback to when when Batman dropped Joker, Napier into the vat of acid or chemicals. Was there that look, a subtle kind of like he's realizing it now? I mean, was there a look then, like maybe in his subconscious that he knew? Because it looks
No.
like he almost dropped him on purpose, like he let go.
No.
You don't think so?
No.
It looked like he let go of Jack on purpose when he dropped into those chemicals.
All right,
Like,
Alfred.
I like that they reference this in Batman Returns, where he's like, "Hey, hi Vic, come on in." He's like, "You just let everyone in here. What the hell?"
But bros before hoes. He just brought the chick in.
Bros before hoes. I like that.
Alfred's, I think, trying to get him to stop being Batman because he knows it's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he even
He's
says,
not
like,
down with a nice girl.
He's
Yeah.
not trying super hard. I mean,
Well,
he could
but
flip
he
the
does say-
fuses off while he's down in the Batcave,
well, he's
and he'd
not
be
gonna,
like, "Oh, put those back
he's
on."
not going to betray him, but like he does say at some point in the movie, like, I have no wish to spend the remaining years of my life mourning my dead friends and their sons.
Or their
whatever.
sons, yeah.
But
here Bruce has slept with Vicky Vale one time. That they've did he only see her that one night, that one morning? I think that's it, right? And when he came over to her apartment, and here she is, a part of this Batman world, and he was confessing or trying to confess who he was. It's too soon. It's too much. It doesn't, on repeated viewings especially, it to me it's a problem.
But
we've compared this to a lot of the other different Batmans, and I know Mike is a fan of like Mask of the Phantasm, for example, and the girl in that, Andrea Beaumont. She knew him a long time ago. Before he became Batman, so his connection to her felt real. This feels forced.
But I mean, that is a really clever little narrative trick that both Mask of the Phantasm and Batman Begins play, where in order to make us buy the romance, which is always a stretch, in almost every movie the romance is a stretch, they just say, oh, they've known each other for almost their whole lives. Like, oh yeah, they knew each other when they were kids. I mean, it's the exact same character, basically.
right,
And it's a really great trick. You instantly buy the relationship because you don't see it happen. Because romance is really hard to capture on film.
Yeah.
They did it in Gone with the Wind.
They did not.
It took 3.5 hours, but you believed it.
No, you didn't. You just wanted to die more than you cared.
You choose to buy the romance just as you choose to buy that someone getting dropped in a vat of chemicals just turns white instead of dying.
Yeah.
It's just that's part that's part of stories. I mean, most of the things that happen in the fiction that we see is not particularly realistic. Reality, the reason we have these stories is because reality is not something that we particularly are interested in.
This is the money shot, guys.
This is
awesome.
This is my least favorite moment in the entire movie.
What?
Batman is killing hundreds of people. He's blowing up.
You know what?
Yeah, but
he is killing.
But they're bad.
I'm just talking about the shot visually. It's the money shot. Max, do you and I ever agree on anything?
Second point. Not just that he's killing people, but this is the most unrealistic structure in the entire history of the Batman franchise. This is a giant, completely unregulated, toxic chemicals facility.
More unrealistic than the observatory and
yes, even more unrealistic than the observatory that can be turned into a freeze ray, because that place has tons of giant vats of chemicals, just open air. There's no ventilation system.
They're run by like a criminal organization.
It's insane. How can this place have not had one OSHA regulation person go through there and say we gotta have some fucking yellow and black bars?
I'm sure they got paid off. I mean,
it's an absurd level of reality, and I do not buy that building. I do not buy that Batman would kill people. I do not buy that the Batmobile has bombs in its tires. It's just
is a little weird.
Too many crazy things all at one moment where I already detached.
You do catch that you're watching a movie about Batman, right?
This is much crazier, if you ask me.
You gotta dress up as a bat fighting crime. I mean, you gotta,
by this
suspend
point,
disbelief a little bit there.
To me, suspension of disbelief is a tricky thing, and you have to sort of maintain it. And I think that, I bought into the idea that there's a guy running around Gotham City with a costume and he solves crimes, and then they had a bunch of crazy other shit happen one after the other, and I just stopped buying into it.
Mr. Ortiz, tell your story about suspension of disbelief. Because that's a weird thing where if you know an actual fact about something, it will pull you completely out of a movie or anything that you're paying attention to.
Stuff that you like. The example I was giving is my brother is a lawyer and he cannot watch any lawyer movie, and it's impossible to watch one with him because even the most realistic of lawyer movies, he will just sit there kind of muttering to himself. That would cause an objection.
Or that's ex parte communication. They would never do that.
And I had a friend of mine who hated the movie Duel, or the TV movie, with the one with the truck.
The Spielberg
because
movie.
There was a shot when the truck goes off the cliff. There's smoke coming out of the exhaust, which means someone was stepping on the accelerator, which they couldn't be happening because there was nobody in the cab. I'm like, it's a stunt man, and that's going to make you hate the movie because they got one technical thing wrong, and everybody has these different levels of what they can and can't accept.
Is that even technically wrong? Because wasn't it a ghost truck?
Okay, hold on.
Step on his own pedal.
Okay.
Honestly, I don't really even know. I've never seen the movie.
No, the movie.
It's not very good.
No, Duel is not explicitly a ghost truck. It's not really explained what's in the car.
Okay. Well, there's a guy in there. You see him.
I thought the intention was that it was mysterious, but I haven't seen it since I was like 12. But the point is that every movie has little problems. I mean, Terminator 2, when the truck hits the wall and the T-1000's in there and it blows up, there's nobody in the driver's seat. So if you see that might bug you, but you move on because it's not a big problem with the movie. It's a problem with the shot.
That's just the kind
the Goonies
What
when
do
the
you
kids
guys
run
what do
away
you guys
from
think
the
of
house.
the bat plane here?
I think it looks
Batwing?
stupid as hell.
It's
Batwing.
the most awesome thing in vehicle history, I'd say.
I think it's pretty awesome, but I don't know. How did he get it?
It's
Did he
1,000
build
times better than the Bat helicopter.
He had a bunch of Korean guys build it, and then he had them all killed because they were criminals.
Well, I remember reading in the comics that as far as the Batmobile is concerned, it had kind of the basic elements of a regular car, but that he, piece by piece, had different companies make sections of it, and he assembled it with Alfred together. But the Batwing, it's pretty complicated. I mean, he had to have pretty much done that himself, and that would take, a pretty extensive knowledge of avionics and everything.
Well, I just said it as a joke, but I just said it as a joke. But I mean, to me, it always did kind of make sense that this is a Batman that kills people. Why wouldn't he just contract the construction to a criminal organization and then kill them all?
Well, until you pointed it out, I honest to God never even realized the fact that he does openly kill people in this, and we all know that that's Batman's rule. And it never even occurred to me. He did blow everyone up in that.
And it's even more explicit in Returns.
In Returns it's less explicit. In this movie, he blows up that
dynamite
building
to a guy in Returns.
Yeah, and throws him down.
He does do that.
It's more personal. It's not him blowing it. Like here, you could almost say he doesn't.
We know.
Are
we really seeing people dying on screen, or maybe they all got away because that's what happens.
He is called the Dark Knight.
He did outright drive into that building and kill everybody on purpose.
But he's called the Dark Knight. He's not the White Knight.
Well, he can do little between being dark and.
For 10 years, I had no idea what she was saying. I never knew what that would. She was like, gas? I couldn't understand her. Couldn't understand Smilex.
She said smelled like gas. Was that what she said?
She said Smilex gas.
Oh, Smilex. Oh,
yeah, it doesn't sound right. She says it badly. I don't know what's up with that.
But subtitle. Yeah.
But Batman is the Dark Knight, so I mean, isn't he going to cross that line? I mean, that's the whole point.
There have been many comics, many of the animated movies. Under the Red Hood specifically points out he talks to Jason Todd about why he doesn't kill, and because it would just be too damn easy for him to completely cross over to the dark side.
So
and he doesn't
many of
do
these things, though, are a very specific take on Batman. I mean, as like we mentioned before, you go back to Batman's first year, he was killing people. He stopped killing people not because of a moral code, but because DC realized that they were going to sell a lot more of these to kids if they soften it up and put in a Robin. The moral code aspect is something that comes as a lot of the things that we're talking about here. Well, and here they explain that he does the Batmobile this way and does that. The real explanations is someone came up with it and somebody years later had to figure out a way to justify it. I mean, none of them really, really work. You can pick them apart because honestly, if any of this worked, somebody would be doing it in our world, and they're not. Well, and that goes back to in this world, things work differently.
The problem with Batman's character isn't the reason people aren't doing it isn't because you wouldn't be able to handle that line of killing people or not. I mean, the reason you don't do it is because nobody is that dedicated and rich.
Okay, no.
Well, it's not stupid. It's the unreality of it.
I mean, what Mike is saying, which makes perfect sense, is the reason why he doesn't kill people is because it's not as family friendly if he does kill people, and that that wasn't an issue here, so that's why they got rid of it or whatever. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, what we've seen through history and what Christopher Nolan has kind of confirmed is that
Batman works best.
Him not killing people is actually a really cool element to the character. The fact that it came about because of essentially censorship.
Right. It doesn't matter that the comics code was involved.
Right.
What matters is that it made the
it's a
character
statement
work.
about his character.
Yeah, and
his
it's,
belief system.
And even though it was retconned into existence, that.
But it helped make the
actually
character
works
work
better. It actually works.
It
better
fit with the character better than the murder.
Yeah.
Oh,
it snapped into
because
place.
Even those goons have a family somewhere, probably. And, Batman wouldn't do that to another, potentially one of their kids. He wouldn't do that.
Right.
It's like you said. Yes, it was retcon because of all that stuff, but it's important to his character,
but
no
I mean,
matter what the political reason.
Yeah, it doesn't matter that there are continuity errors. Well, the point is that when Batman was working best. Yeah, when Batman was working best, he was not killing people, and he has snapped into existence, and like the best versions of Batman have sort of crystallized essentially around that one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like the best versions of Batman are essentially
has
about him not killing people.
Has worked best, but also when Batman has worked worst. I mean, that's
Trailer
because it's been part of Batman for so long that and again, it goes back to even this idea when you get to the Dark Knight Returns, this idea that Batman is responsible for the death of anyone who dies at the hands of the Joker.
Yeah, I just want to.
They avoid bringing that up in most comics because you get into that strange sort of moral area that they really don't want to talk about.
Well, they do it, but on occasion. But I just want to point out, in terms of the reality of this movie being implausible and ridiculous, Batman just flew in front of the moon briefly, so that the moon was briefly the Batman logo.
Yeah, well,
Joker's about to pull out a 6-foot-long pistol. I mean, he's not going to get killed here.
What's wrong with him flying in front of the moon?
Yeah,
that was an
because
awesome...
it requires that he know that there's a camera there,
and that you're looking at it from that angle.
They just happen to set up the thing right
no,
there. So
look,
that they
Jesus
could get a really
Christ,
good
the movie doesn't work.
He's firing at the Death Star right now. It's so sweet. Stay on target.
Using the Force. Yeah.
Stay on target.
It's
too tight.
Feelings, Luke.
See, he's not using the Force. That's the problem.
I need to bring William Hootkins back as Porkins.
He's got to turn off his computer.
He doesn't have any midichlorians.
And he still missed.
He's not a
He still
superhero.
misses. Yeah, why? There's no reason.
Kal-El's got
reason.
tons
He
of
had him
midichlorians.
lack of midi.
Well, it's because
The only
Joker's
reason he
racial.
had this gun was for
Yes,
this
he's
moment.
proton torpedoes. Yeah, exactly.
Joker managed to hit him, and Batman had targeting devices. How did he miss?
Well,
Because the Joker was standing in the middle of the road and Batman was firing at that point, and the guns are that far apart, so he can't hit him.
Yeah, if he had one gun in the middle instead of one on each side,
right? Or if they could orient to the vertex where they're like the 3D cameras these days, but he doesn't have that.
That doesn't look like a model at all.
That's yeah.
I don't mind that because I want to have that miniature.
They just shot it with the tilt shift thing.
No, they didn't.
Oh, okay.
And it had a propeller airplane crashing sound.
It took me years to realize that it didn't make any goddamn sense that there were a whole bunch of Joker henchmen in that church.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, that means that they're already in there.
Because they're positioned all over the city.
They were.
Let's say
they were in their coffee break, hanging out.
And they go to the church on their coffee break to confess their sins.
Dudes, this is where they shot Vertigo, and check it out. It's awesome, right? No, okay.
Is that your argument?
That
doesn't hold.
Where did he get that cool microphone radio thing? What's up with that?
He got it from the Joker.
He had to have all this stuff custom built, just like the cars.
Yeah, and then painted.
Well, in this universe, there's a company that does that for all the superheroes and supervillains.
For supervillains and their minions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there has to be. I mean, how else can you justify it?
Maybe Alfred made it for him. Maybe Alfred is this weird character behind the scenes, creating both Batman and his own villains.
That's what Batman 5 was going to be about.
Alfred was the one that suggested the Waynes go to that movie, I believe.
Because he's the real Ra's al Ghul.
Now, what is plot-wise or character-wise or whatever? What is the reason for the Joker going up to the top of this building? Why? Why is he doing this?
Well,
he's just
always climb.
Because I know the
Mike
helicopters
said,
to show up there, but what? I mean, why? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, why does he poison everybody? For what reason?
Why did he have a freaking parade? He's a showman. He has a sense of drama. He's trying to bring gravitas to the final conflict.
Perhaps.
are
This is my
other
favorite
stupid
Batman.
things that
Seeing Batman
rationalize.
beat up. You
Yeah.
know, like he's in Die Hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's gonna run over glass. I like that. Like seeing because he's
Did you
human.
notice
You know,
that
you
his
get to see him
gun
be human.
barrel collapses?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our ninja of stealthiness right there.
Well, the gun barrel.
I'm
did
coming,
shoot.
everybody. I'm coming.
Yeah.
Just wait for me. Yeah.
Well, he
Better-
was
better
just
pick that up, guys.
he was
Better
just
pick up
in
the
a
speed.
in a straight up plane crash.
Yeah,
I mean,
did
he
just
is
eat some
he
serious
is
shit.
he is walking after a plane crash. Generally speaking, that's pretty fucking impressive.
Hey, what's it? Leo DiCaprio just survived in The Aviator. You know, Howard Hughes survived.
Yeah, but he was hospitalized for like
Yeah.
a long time.
Yeah, but he still
Yeah.
lives. He
No,
still lives.
but
That's what I meant.
this dude
So-
this dude
You know,
got
that's
up
survival
and started
thing.
walking.
The armor.
Also, I mean, if you see that stairway, I could not make it up that stairway.
Oh heck no! I'd have a heart attack.
I would not have made it like a halfway up that thing. Like, I mean, that looks horrifying, and Batman's
What,
doing
what
it
was the line
wounded.
from Ghostbusters that Pete
When-
Bateman says when he's
Well,
going up?
when we get to 20, what is it, 23 or 22?
like that.
Let me know. I'm gonna throw up.
that would be me.
Oh, when we get to 20, let me know. I'm gonna throw up because they had 2 more floors to go. Okay, there it is. Yeah, like I don't understand how Vicky could get up those stairs. Maybe the Joker because he's nuts and he's got that psycho, strength and resilience. But Batman, he's in a plane crash. I don't buy it. It's impossible.
Yeah.
He would rest, camp out for the night, and then head up the rest of the stairs the next day.
Yeah, and you're right. I didn't think about it till last night when watching this. That why are all of those villains already there? All those goons.
Yeah,
It
they're
doesn't make
already
any sense.
hidden
But-
in position.
Yeah, they're just they have been waiting there this whole time. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And was his plan to always escape here? To always go up?
That's
this?
what I was saying. Why is he
Yeah,
going to the top of this?
because
It doesn't.
he didn't expect his plan to be foiled by the Batwing.
No, the only reason.
Really?
Really? Yeah, lost him again. He was about to make a good point too. It sounded like.
Well, I mean, he's getting picked up by a helicopter, but apparently a helicopter that can't land on the ground.
His mic has more problems than Tim Burton's directing.
So I guess
Oh.
after he killed everyone in the parade, he planned on going up this building and being picked up. I guess that was his. I guess that's what he planned on doing.
Well, he did tell the helicopter to meet him at the top, didn't he? And then in 5 minutes, and then better make it
So
10.
Yeah, he
Right.
told him that it's gonna to meet him up there, but the question is why.
So what do you guys think of Commissioner Gordon?
He's a little chubby.
I like
He's
Commissioner
a
Gordon
lot
in this
like
movie.
the 1966
Yeah, that's true.
and, Gordon.
Well, he's kind of a fusion of Gordon and Chief O'Hara.
Yeah,
Gordon
He
never wore a
is.
police
He is.
outfit.
I prefer him in this because he's against Batman as opposed to the other movies. He's actually a cop. He's like, I don't need you. You're a vigilante. You're going to screw me up.
There's actually
That completely changes by Batman Forever, though.
the comics have
Well,
like
he gives him a signal.
they play
it
play
changes
into
by
the
Batman
aspect of it
Returns.
though.
Yeah, he
Changes
does.
by
He
the end
does.
of this movie.
In the comics,
Yeah.
they sort of
He gave
oscillate.
us a signal.
They shift back and
Yeah.
forth. Like gradually, Batman will be alienated by Gordon, and they'll sort of
Yeah.
swing back
mean-
and forth over time.
In Returns, the movie opens up. He's like, Batman, where the hell were you? You're waiting, and-
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, even in the comics, from the 40s up until the time this movie is made, Batman is mostly on the side of the law and is actually supposedly a deputized agent of the law.
Oh, I don't like the idea of him being deputized.
That kind of comes and goes.
That was in the comics for good 40
Now, Superman,
years.
yes.
No, it's a weird thing. Like comic books have like these really fuzzy rules where like if you don't mention something for a year, it doesn't exist anymore. And like when there were various phases where people just didn't think that worked. Like whenever Batman would show up and the cops would be like, "Oh, go on in, Bats." That wouldn't work.
I remember when this came out, talking to my buddy, and we had always said that if Robin existed in this universe at this point, that this black guy would have killed him because he just totally works Batman over. That he would have just smoked Robin.
Why's he got to be a black guy?
Yeah,
Well, the only reason he works Batman over is because they need to work Batman over in this scene. That's
Well,
it.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, otherwise they can't have this nice dance.
He was a pretty
gotta
tough
keep him
hombre, though.
distracted. Yeah, he almost did kill Batman. I mean, the mistake he makes is when he tilts his head over the hole there and he gets pulled down. I mean, he gets Batman's number.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we need this scene here with Jack Nicholson being able to show off his acting talents.
Okay, now there's a weird thing coming up here, and Tsyto, you're the one out of all of us who can confirm this, but not now, but when Vicky Vale sees Batman and decides to start distracting the Joker by saying, like, oh man, you're so hot, I love purple, and that kind of stuff, there's actually, I think this version is the original cut, where it is what it is, but there's like an alternate version where for some reason they changed it, like a shot where she's like kissing him and then like picks lint
and
out of her mouth.
she slinks down.
Yeah. Well, no, that's here, but like she starts kissing his shoulder or whatever. At one point, there's like a little comical moment where like she gets like a piece of lint or something in her mouth
on her tongue.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. I know that.
Like
Yeah.
pulls it out of her. Yeah, that. I don't know. It's weird. I don't understand the reason why there's two different versions, but there are.
But that should be in this cut, right? Where she picks that out of her mouth?
I don't think so. I think
Really?
I think that's like on the disc that first came out, the Tsyto disc.
I'm watching the special edition DVD of it. Yeah,
So
you
that-
got me totally fascinated.
So that one, I
know
think,
the
I don't know.
shot.
Well, I mean, who knows? We're all watching different versions, so we'll see. But like on the Tsyto disc, which has the widescreen
Tysco
on one
disc.
side and the flat one on the other one, or not the flat, the full frame.
Jesus
on the other
effing
one.
Christ.
Whatever.
We're not
one
even
of-
there yet. Look, everybody, when we get to that point, say something.
It's coming-
Let's
it's
move
coming up. It's
on.
coming up right
now.
here.
It's coming-
But
yeah, see right here.
But yeah, Tsyto has both versions on that disc.
Wait.
Here it is, right here.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah.
She like gets a string or lint or something in her mouth. Yeah.
Mhm. But we'll see. I mean, like on our version, we're watching the Blu-ray.
This is the first time I've seen this.
Yeah, there it is.
She just
There it goes.
Okay,
She did.
So she did it.
And that was cut?
It was altered. There was like an alternate shot in there somewhere.
I didn't even notice that. I can't believe I never noticed that before.
I always found it funny that she did that.
I can't believe anyone ever noticed it.
The internet notices
Because by this
everything.
point, aren't you just, paying more attention to the paint around you?
No, this is
And the decorations in your room?
I mean, it does suffer from the problem that like this climax isn't nearly as exciting as some of the other stuff that comes earlier in the movie.
Well, I mean,
but-
he did just have a huge fight with a mini-boss, leading up to his fight with the boss, who has no fighting skills.
Can I go back a second? Was Vicky Vale about to give the Joker a blowjob?
Yes, it looks
No,
like
she wasn't.
She just vanishes out of frame down, below, and it's like, wait a minute. And then he gets a funky ass look on his face. Was that?
I think that
Was that how she wanted to distract
him.
him?
She wanted him. To
I think
believe.
she's getting ready
no,
to.
she was
you know what I mean?
making
She wasn't going to do it, but she had to
She had to
show
sell
him
it.
some commitment. She was
Yeah.
selling.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was
selling.
making it look like it.
That
Mike
means
is
he
right,
had that
though.
in his pocket the whole friggin' time.
Here. The original
that's right.
non-special edition Region 1 DVD actually contains two different versions of the film. The full-screen version is the theatrical version. The widescreen version
You killed my parents.
has one brief shot replaced. It is a small scene near the end at 1:54:06, just before Batman fights the Joker. In the full-screen version, Vicky Vale gets a disgusted look when she kisses the Joker's jacket and pulls lint out of her mouth. However, in the widescreen version, she really seems to like it. So what did you see, Tsyto?
I'm watching the widescreen version, and yeah, she doesn't get any lint in her mouth, but she doesn't really seem to like it. It's pretty clear that she's faking it.
Okay, all
How
right.
weird. How weird.
I've still got the old VHS somewhere. I should check it out.
So the old VHS should be fine. That should be the theatrical, because it's full frame.
Yeah, that's the correct version of the movie.
Maybe that's why I never noticed, because I grew up with that version, not this one.
Yeah.
I always remember seeing that, though.
Well, did you have the original non-special?
You know,
edition
I don't know if
DVD?
you're going to see it in the framing of this, but I remember, I want to say it was maybe the video cassette back when this came out, that there's a shot here with Batman hanging where they went too low, and you can see that he's only wearing the top half of the suit.
Yeah, because they opened up.
Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
that's
right.
It's probably
They probably
open
just matted.
matte.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are a
Yeah.
lot of things like that. With
Same thing
full
happened
Then you're
with
not going to
the-
see it in this, but in the full frame, you would see that.
Yeah, the same thing happened with Pee-wee's Big Adventure, right? Where you can
Yeah.
see the chain.
But yeah, you see the chain coming out of the
Yeah.
yeah.
coming
You know-
up through the bottom of his
Oh, the
saddlebag.
bike. Right.
and what's the other one?
You know, for a villain,
Tremors.
the Joker is not at all terrifying, but Pee Wee Herman terrifies me.
Yeah, he's
They should have had
I
Paul
can't
Rubens
watch
play
that
the
movie.
Joker.
Oh my god, I would not have been able to watch it. I actually get scared. He terrifies me. I'm not even kidding.
Well, I wonder
Still
if
to
Tim
this
Burton,
day,
had him in mind
to
for
this
that
day,
movie.
he creeps me the fuck out.
They're very similar characters, though.
They are. They are.
Yeah.
And Pee-wee is so dedicated, you know, and he'll do anything to accomplish his goal. I mean, if he was just sadistic, that would be the Joker.
That
He
sounds
fell
so.
into a vat of chemicals.
That's like
And
that,
people are strangely drawn to him.
that
you
is
know?
the most terrifying image that you've just given me. Paul Rubens as the Joker, dedicated to his craft. That would haunt my fucking dreams. If that was in this movie and I saw it in 1989,
Well-
I would have fucking killed myself.
Well, I mean, a few years later, we get Jim Carrey's The Riddler. I mean,
That's
There's
nothing.
got to be
That's
a photo
nothing.
about there where they just take the Pee-wee costume and make it the Joker colors and make his face white.
Oh
He
my
could have
god,
been the Joker.
so scary.
It would have been awesome.
I think Tim
It's
Burton maybe
horrifying.
had him in mind for that. Why not? I mean, he did
Maybe
opt
he-
for Keaton.
I don't
Maybe
even
he
wanna
would
think
opt
about that.
for Paul Rubens.
They probably wanted a big name because no
Oh,
one
they
really
knew
thought Keaton was going to work.
Oh yeah,
Was
they knew they
Burton-
needed a big name. I mean, this movie wasn't anything until Nicholson signed on, right?
Yeah.
It was the same thing as you know Superman. As you get bigger names outside of the main hero.
Pee Wee Herman was a pretty big name, but you couldn't credit Pee Wee Herman as the Joker. That would be
No.
kind of weird. That would be a level of reality that even
Yeah,
even
fictional
Bruce Wayne would be
character,
confused
fictional
by.
character.
Well, and you wouldn't think that Paul Rubens would want to lose Pee Wee Herman.
Oh,
Think
he-
about how much money he was making from that.
Oh, he desperately wanted to lose it at the time. Oh, he hated
In the
it.
late
Pass
80s?
No, the contract was required that he always appear as Pee Wee Herman. Always. That's horrifying.
But he still
Even
loved
at
the
home when
character.
he was
wanted to
alone.
bring the character back.
Like
later.
any time he was in an interview, he couldn't say his own opinion. He had to be the character. He like had no identity. Like they were contractually obligating him to be typecast forever.
Would a body just pop if it fell that
Oh yeah,
way
he would have
on the concrete?
Not
Yeah,
one
splattered
soaked
like
in
crazy.
chemicals.
Yeah.
No, your skin is pretty tough. It wouldn't pop.
I've seen some pretty messed up stuff on the internet, and
Yeah,
people
you can
don't
see
really
stuff
pop.
on the internet, man.
People don't really pop. Like parts do, but mostly they don't.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
just like
I can't
the other
imagine
day,
it's
I-
in one piece.
He
I
seemed
saw
to
a
have
guy-
completely cracked the concrete, but his body's intact. That wouldn't quite happen.
His head
Chemicals.
would probably be smashed a little bit, but you'd still be mostly there. He'd still be
Oh
in
yeah,
that
I'm
shape.
not saying he would pop like a balloon, but
Yeah.
I mean he would be. It would be a
Splattered.
mess.
Oh, there'd
Yeah.
there'd be some
Yeah, I mean, I
some
remember hearing
stuff to mop
stories-
up afterwards.
Stories of people jumping from the Twin Towers, and people would tell
would tell
what
the
they
pop.
saw and heard. Yeah, and it was not pleasant. So I can imagine he was
Well,
still.
see, he
be
wasn't
together.
really dead. The chemicals gave him a limited invulnerability, and he's just in a healing coma.
He's got 9 lives. When you fall at a great distance in a Tim Burton movie, you get 9 lives.
So everybody remembers after they show him dead, when they announced Batman Returns, everybody, at least I remember as a kid talking about, are they bringing back the Joker? That'd be so cool if they brought back the Joker. Was he really dead? I remember that being a huge thing
well,
back in the 90s.
and there was also even when he was doing press for As Good as It Gets in 1997, or whatever it was.
Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, Jack Nicholson.
Jack
he was
Nicholson
talking
got
about
asked
how
about the Joker.
Yeah, in Batman 5, he implied that it was a done deal that he was going to play the Joker, presumably in flashbacks in Batman 5.
Really?
Also,
well, the
I
Joker
just did
died in the comics and come back.
Sure.
Well,
I
that's
also
comics.
I also did a search online for Paul Rubens' Joker, and I came up with a bunch of stories from June of 2006, where there was apparently a rumor going around that Paul Rubens was going to play the Joker in The Dark Knight.
That would have been awesome.
I would have killed myself.
I mean, Heath Ledger was awesome, but I think that I would love to have seen that. That would have been really, or even as the Riddler. I could
As
see him
the
as
Riddler,
the Riddler.
yeah,
too.
that would work great.
It would have been interesting, that's for sure.
I think that guy.
I always wanted Willem
has-
Dafoe as the Joker.
That'd be okay. Well, he did that. He did that in Spider-Man.
That dude creeps me
Yeah.
out.
He has the mouth.
He has.
That
the
was one
face
thing is
for
I
it,
never
yeah.
liked how both here and in the Dark Knight how the Joker's got this, his face is kind of carved into that freakish smile, whereas in the comics he just was a dude with a big mouth.
Well, that changes with the artist, actually. Like that pretty much fluctuates with every different penciler.
Well, I mean, they were never scars or anything like that. They was just
He didn't have scars in the
an exaggerated
series,
drawing.
But I thought that was a good.
That actually depends.
So because like when I first
I've never
heard
seen Joker that had a disfigured face.
No, in the canonical like main timeline, no, he always had some sort of like freakishness, but the nature of the freakishness was sort of malleable. It was never really very specifically clear that it was either a mutation or a scar or like a birth
it's
defect.
Just the artist drew it more exaggerated. It was never that his face changed. The only changes were the hair color and the skin color.
Right.
It was never that he was distorted.
But the way it was drawn, like sometimes it did definitely look like a scar, and sometimes it did definitely look like like some sort of birth defect or an aberration, and sometimes it just looked like he was Steven Tyler.
I saw it as a distortion, not a scar, but I thought the scars were a great way that Nolan came up with of making that character fit in that world. But so here we are at the end of this movie. The credits are rolling.
Bob Kane was on the set.
Yeah,
that's awful.
We should mention that the Joker was based on.
He wasn't in the movie.
Character from an earlier film.
Yeah, the Man Who Laughs. Or whatever.
Yeah.
Which was Scars, correct? In that.
I think so.
I think he was actually
scarred by a sword. Yeah.
And Batman's also based on a character from a movie. I don't remember the name.
Zorro.
No, there was another one. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, it's an amalgamation. Oh,
it's some silent film
the other day. Who cares?
Well, since we're rolling up to the end of the credits here, do you guys just want to give some final thoughts before it taps out?
Yeah. Tsyto, go.
This is. I remember in '89 when this came out, it was a big deal. The idea that Batman was now dark, because I grew up in the '70s with reruns of the Adam West Batman. So this was, and Tim Burton himself was a known quantity at this point. This was a big deal, and it turned out to be a good movie, and that surprised an awful lot of people like me. But at the same time, I feel like the overall story and performances don't quite hold up, and it's okay, but it's not one of my favorites ever.
All right, Damon, go.
Vagina.
Oh, yeah. look at that visual effects art director Peter.
He stole my thing. Anyway, I was going to say that.
Okay, Mike Ortiz.
This actually. And I think I mentioned before, when it came out, I absolutely loved it because it was Batman, and I didn't think I would ever get Batman on a big screen. It had been, many years, or at least several. It had been many years since we had a good Superman, and I was just totally floored by it. And then subsequent viewings, it got a little weaker, and then the years, it just sort of took its toll. But now, coming back to it, I think I appreciate a lot of the things that I appreciated in the first place, and certainly it's flawed, but now I'm kind of at a point where I just think almost every movie is flawed, and it's a matter of what works in it as opposed to what doesn't work in it, and I think there's a lot that still does work, and certainly it defined what a comic book movie was going to be for a very, very long time. I think really up until Nolan would redefine it with the same character.
Josh.
Well, as I said, this has been our journey backwards through the cinematic saga of The Dark Knight, and finally ending up on this movie. I'm glad we're done, looking at these movies, because...
Oh, I was just going to recommend that we do Batman Begins.
Well...
I thought you were going to say 66.
No, we don't. Nobody has the stomach for that.
That's a whole other animal.
I would totally do 66.
I would.
I don't think that time has been particularly kind to any one of these series of Batman films. I mean, Batman '89 to Batman and Robin, they have not aged well. And I was hoping that rewatching this last night, I hadn't seen it for years, that I would appreciate it more. And I felt kind of let down. It didn't capture me like it did when I was a kid back in '89. And, I got into all the cards and the hoopla about it. It was a big thing, and I didn't get that same sense with it now. It does feel small, and I felt this wasn't a Batman movie at all. I really felt this was a movie about Vicky Vale and Alexander Knox and the Joker, and it wasn't about Batman. Was just a guy in their movie. It should have been called, Joker or something like that. But I think it's the strongest of these set of films. So I would still recommend it, although I can't say I'm in the mood I'm in the mood to watch it again soon. But that's me.
Justin?
I think that one of the biggest disservices you could do to this movie is to compare it to the Nolan movies. I think it and the 3 sequels to this one really should be it's apples and oranges, and you have to put yourself in a certain mindset to get into this one. And obviously the sequels from Forever and Robin, they turn into something totally different, but this, like we pointed out, is in a hyper reality, whereas Batman Begins and The Dark Knight are in reality, or as much reality as you can have with a guy dressing up as a bat. But this movie and its sequels take place in this hyper reality, and I think it's basically a good movie. But as Josh is pointing out, it's not about Batman. It's about the Joker, Vicky Vale, and it's not Batman's movie. But it's still a good movie. I think it still holds up pretty well. I do think it has some dead spots. I think it needed some reworking, some re-editing, but I think it's basically a solid movie, and I think we would look at it very different had Nolan not reinvented the universe. But I still think it's a decent movie, and it's got some good things in it. So. I enjoyed watching it replay, but man, whoever pointed out that thing about Batman killing and about Batman, or Bruce Wayne, I should say, seducing Vicky Vale. Boy, those things really stuck out to me and almost took me out of it. And if I sit down to rewatch this again, that's going to be a real hard thing for me to get through, because it flies in conflict with who his character is. But it's still a good movie. I enjoy it.
Max?
Oh. I agree with a lot of the things that were just said, except I don't need the Nolan movies to compare these movies to. I primarily compare the Tim Burton movies to the animated series, and the Tim Burton movies are so far wanting compared to the animated series that I have no difficulty saying that Tim Burton's movies in the Batman series suck. And because they are stylistically very similar to the animated series, there's definitely a very close reality there. It's not really apples and oranges; it's more like apples and good apples. And there's to me that's very easy. And when you've got an animated series that has a rather low budget and has a lot of problems on its own, that's still leaps and bounds better than the two movies that sort of defined the medium for the time. Yeah, I have no difficulty saying that the Tim Burton Batman movies suck and the Joel Schumacher movies suck by comparison to those movies, because they're still pretty close. And so yeah, I don't have a problem with that. They're not great movies. I don't like them. I understand the appeal of the style and the visuals, but come on, guys, they're just not that good.
Comparing the animated series to these movies is apples and oranges. The animated series has several hundred hours, compared to 4. To tell a story.
It doesn't matter.
There's way more bad animated series than this movie.
The reason that Damon did his commentary with Brian Townsend on the Batman animated series instead of me is because I believe my exact words is there's no way I'm sitting through that series again. I really didn't like the Batman animated. I mean, I liked it a lot when I saw it. When it first came out, I popped in the DVDs as soon as I bought them. I'm like, oh my god, why did I like this cartoon so much?
No, I'm not arguing that individual episodes of the show hold up. I'm saying that in terms of a good story, there is more quality in those than in these movies. And I don't know why people feel the need to defend these movies. Why can't there just be a smaller pool of good movies?
I'm not defending the movies as much as saying that the reason why the animated series is so good is because it has a foundation to build on.
I agree to a great extent, and I think that a lot of the foundation that it had, even in the first season, when it didn't have 4 hours, essentially the entire first season came out to about 4 hours, really.
It was like 26 hours or something.
For the first season?
Yeah,
it's 60
episodes.
It's
long.
60 episodes? That's insane.
It was a daily show when it
But
launched.
the amount of hours is one thing, and the fact is that the stories are just more solid. There are fewer plot holes in the animated series, and there are totally plot holes in the animated series. And
they're also 22-minute episodes compared to a 2-hour and 10-minute movie.
Well,
it's hard to compare the two.
I don't have a problem comparing the two.
If your primary standard is how tight the story is, then sure, but that's not my primary standard for the movies that I watch. That is an element, but it is not. I will completely agree that this movie's a mess and the story doesn't make any sense. But honestly, if you go to a Tim Burton movie and complain that there's no story, that's like watching a porno movie and complaining there's too much sex.
Well, I mean that is exactly what I'm saying. Like, that is why I don't go to Tim Burton movies anymore.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. If that's what you are looking for in a movie, you're not going to find it here. This is not tight or smart or well written or anything like that. But that's not what is important to me about these movies. That's not what I get out of them.
That's fine. To me, saying that it's not tight or smart is kind of like saying it's bad. But I mean, I guess there are other metrics.
Yeah. I mean, but the thing is, I've seen movies that are tight and smart and have no plot holes that I find just completely uninteresting and boring. That's not what makes a movie good for me. I mean, honestly, I can tear. I mean, Damon and I kind of showed this on our Star Trek II commentary. I can tear a movie apart constantly for 2 hours. You talk about The Dark Knight. I can tear that movie apart with things that I think don't make sense and don't work and are plot holes. Every movie has that. It's just whether or not, if the movie engages you, you don't pay attention to those things. But if you choose to look at those, then you can find them. And so this movie did not get you. It did not grab you for whatever reason, and all of these things become, completely obvious. Whereas when I see it, I don't care. I don't when I'm watching it, see those things. I see those things when I think about it afterwards, and they're two different experiences for me.
No, I know. I mean, we could argue about the relative quality of it. It's just that I don't like movies that aren't smart. And I just can't watch a Tim Burton movie because they are boring. I got to a point where I saw Sleepy Hollow, and I hated him because it was just so empty. It was pretty, but it was empty, and that's where I stopped even experimenting with a new Tim Burton movie. I wouldn't even see it because I knew that it would be pretty, and I'd want to like it, and it would disappoint me.
You saw Planet of the Apes. I know because I was with you when you saw it. Liar.
Well, that's Planet of the Apes!
All right, whatever.
Planet of the Apes sucked.
Anyway,
But it was a Planet of the Apes movie.
Visually, sure, it looked great, but it sucked.
I mean, I was a huge fan of the original Planet of the Apes movies.
So was I.
I loved those movies, so I thought, come on, get this right, Tim Burton.
He messed it up.
Yeah, I still saw Tim Burton movies afterwards, but it was more out of obligation.
Yeah. Well, on that note, guys, I'm going to sign out.
All right. Yeah, me too.
All right, guys. It was fun.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good times.
Nope. Thank you for having me, guys.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Well, this is Justin of the Soulless Minions. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
And
I just waved at him because I don't know how sound works.
And I guess if I were to sum up my opinions on the movie, having watched all these things in reverse order and over the past few months, especially with Returns and Batman so close together and with them both being, Burton movies, I really was sort of, I always knew that there was a difference, but I was, comparing and contrasting the differences in this and what makes this one so much more vital than the other one. And I think it's the fact that this one is ever so slightly more grounded in a kind of reality than Returns, whereas Returns is just completely off its rocker at times, and this is only just kind of. And I think this one happened to strike the right balance between maybe studio input and Tim Burton input, and I think it works really, really well. I mean, I acknowledge that it has tons and tons of problems, but when I'm watching it, I'm into it. I'm totally down with this movie, and it kind of represents 80s movies to me in a sense. Don't know why, it just does. So
I'm glad it was made because that's why we have superhero movies. But it doesn't hold up.
Yeah. So, that's my thoughts. Anyone else got anything else to say?
Vagina.
All right. On that note, we will wrap this up. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. And
I'm going to post Vagina as a user review on Amazon.com for this movie.
Cool. And we will talk to you all in the future.
Night.
Vagina.